Welcome to Nocturne Historia. A torch still burns in the distance, its flame breathing low against the velvet dark. You watch it from the edge of sleep, where shadows curl like old parchment. Somewhere, wind moves through tall grass, and the stars above you flicker, bright, unblinking eyes from 1,000 forgotten gods. A child sleeps under lion's fur, his face pale in moonlight. Around him, silence, but for the weight of a future whispering from far away. He does not yet stir, but already the world beneath him shivers like a dream not meant to last, and in that flicker of firelight, something waits to wake. The breeze brushes your cheek, and you feel the press of old stone beneath your feet. You're standing within the halls of Pella, marble cool against the soles of your memory, columns stretching like pale tree trunks toward the vaulted sky. The palace is quiet, but not empty. Somewhere behind silk curtains and bronze lamp glow, a queen dreams of storm and empire, and a king sharpens maps into weapons. Outside, the Aegean breathes against the coast, but here, a boy breathes deeper than the sea. His name is Alexander. You do not say it aloud. In this place, names have gravity. A lion's pelt is draped over the child's shoulders, not just any lion, but the Nemean beast from myth, echo of Heracles, thick with symbol and scent. It weighs nearly as much as he does. Still, he wears it. Not for warmth, not for costume, for fate. You move slowly past a high window. The moon catches the child's lashes like silver reeds. He does not stir, but within his dreams, cities burn, and empires rise like phoenixes from ash. He dreams of Achilles, of the Iliad sung soft as a lullaby, and of Persia, far and wide, like a golden mirage glinting behind his eyelids. You almost forget this isn't a memory. His mother, Olympias, speaks to him in hushed coils, her voice part oracle, part fire. She tells him he is the son of Zeus, thunder-blooded and chosen. The words settle over him like balm, like spell, like prophecy. Somewhere, deeper in the palace, King Philip drinks beside his generals. His laughter echoes, low, lion-like, edged in wine. But this child, he is quieter. A stillness wrapped in a flame. You follow the torchlight deeper into the dream, through corridors painted with the battles of ancestors and the myths of gods. You pass a painted shield where Perseus holds the Gorgon's head, frozen mid-scream. You pass another closed door, and there it is again, that quiet sense that something is already shifting. In the boy's hand, curled loosely against the linen, is a wax tablet etched with foreign names: Troy, Babylon, Persepolis. You imagine his finger trailing those letters, like a whisper against fate. A shadow leans across his bed, just the shape of the lion's mane cast by a swaying flame. But it looks, for a moment, like the crown of an empire. And in that hush, you hear it. Not the future, not the past, but the moment they meet. A place, neither night nor day. A breath between breaths. The breeze shifts. You're still there. Perhaps you wonder what makes someone believe they are more than mortal. Is it the blood, the stories, the dreams, or simply the silence between battles, when no one is watching, and a boy becomes something else entirely? And still, he sleeps, one hand near his chest, the other curled like a scroll yet to be written, the lion's pelt rising and falling, like a sail waiting for wind. Later that night, the wind curls like a ribbon through the palace eaves, carrying secrets across marble and time. You drift down a corridor lit by shallow oil lamps, their flames bowing gently, like priests in a silent ritual. The floor beneath you remembers 1,000 footsteps, queens in mourning, tutors in sandals, messengers with bloodied scrolls. You pass beneath a vaulted ceiling, each panel painted in lapis and ochre, scenes of gods birthing lightning, of mortals kneeling in storms. One ceiling tile shows a child touching the chin of a god with trembling fingers. Another shows a lion with stars in its mane. The silence is heavier now. Below this canopy of stories sleeps Alexander again, not as a boy this time, but as a student. You find him in the antechamber of thought. Scrolls piled beside figs, a single candle bleeding down the bronze holder, and a man waiting with eyes like dry thunder. Aristotle, the philosopher, the cutter of fog. He does not raise his voice when he speaks, yet the boy listens as if the words were spells. You watch from the edge, where dreams blend into knowing. Every man has a telos, the teacher says softly, a purpose, and yours is not peace. Alexander blinks slowly. He is 13, maybe less, but there is something older inside him. Not arrogance, not yet, just hunger, for clarity, for legacy, for gods that bleed. His tutor offers him a sphere, etched with continents not yet seen. It spins gently in his hands. And where does your empire end? The boy's voice is quiet. Where the stars begin. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. You feel the weight of that room, the tension like silk stretched between two pegs. The philosopher shapes minds as a sculptor chips marble. And Alexander? He accepts the chisel. Here, the Iliad is not just a story, it's scripture. Achilles is not myth, he is kin. A warrior with a short life and a long shadow. Alexander copies his words onto parchment, ink still wet under his fingers. Let me not be forgotten, even in death. He holds that phrase like a dagger tucked behind his tongue. Outside, in the palace orchard, nightingales sing to the figs. Their song is barely a note above silence, but it drips like honey into the boy's ears. And as Aristotle speaks of logic, of virtue, of the movement of the stars, Alexander is already calculating how to make the world bend. The tutor speaks of Persia, its libraries, its gold-threaded maps, its endless languages. He tells of Zoroaster and fire temples, of the Apadana and the secret veins of empire. But what Alexander hears is a place to conquer. And in his chest, something flutters, not fear, something warmer, crueler, like ambition with wings. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The ceiling above them seems to shimmer. The gods painted there tilt their heads slightly, as if to listen, as if they know this boy's thoughts will one day redraw every border they ever guarded. His fingers trace the edge of a scroll, not with reverence, but curiosity, as though the past were only fuel for what he's meant to become. The candle gutters once, then steadies. In that moment, the faces of both student and teacher soften into shadow. There is affection between them, but distance too. Aristotle will not follow his student into war. He will not climb the Hindu Kush. He will not kneel in Babylon. But tonight, they are linked by a single thought. The world is too small for what comes next. And yet, somewhere in the quietest part of you, you wonder if knowledge was ever enough to tame what lives inside a soul like Alexander's. Beneath the painted ceiling, time holds its breath, and in that stillness, you see it. Not a king, not yet, but a spark, a promise, a storm waiting for sky. The silence still hums, stretching between the columns like silk left out in morning fog. You drift farther now, away from scrolls and soft candlelight, into the gardens where early dew clings to fig leaves and night still argues gently with dawn. The boy walks there, alone, but not unaccompanied. He carries the voice of his teacher in his chest like a second heartbeat. He does not simply memorize, he becomes. Each morning, Aristotle meets him beneath the olive trees, where shade and truth are both uneven. The philosopher speaks of causes, of forms, of how the soul longs toward its ideal. He gestures toward the hawk circling above them and says, "To rise, You must not only fly, you must know what wind you serve. Alexander listens with the intensity of a blade being honed. His gaze never drifts. His fingers tap slowly against his knee. He is already translating wisdom into action, ideas into geometry, then into movement, into conquest. You pass a column etched with symbols, Plato's hand, Socrates' silence, and the whisper of thought still lingers on the stone. They read together. Anabasis, the fragments of Heraclitus, the epic rhythms of Homer again and again. The boy starts to speak in echoes, in riddles. He tells his companions, "What is invisible moves the visible." They do not understand. He does not mind. A bell rings again, softer this time. The lessons shift. The world folds open like a scroll in the wind. They speak of medicine, Alexander asking how wounds fester, how fevers deceive. They speak of politics, how power must sometimes disguise itself as kindness. They speak of gods, and whether gods grow jealous of mortals who outshine their own myths. And always they speak of virtue, of how it is not gentleness, but a sharpening. Aristotle warns him, "A tyrant confuses dominion with destiny." Alexander replies, "And a philosopher confuses stillness with peace." The teacher nods. He is not offended. The lion is no longer a cub. One afternoon, Alexander lifts a small dagger from the table and examines its blade in the light. "If a mind can be this sharp," he murmurs, "perhaps thought alone can cut through fate." Later, alone in his chambers, you find him writing by lamplight. The ink is dark as dried blood. He copies lines from Pindar. "Do not strive to be immortal. Strive to do what will make you remembered." You almost forget this isn't a memory. The garden wind stirs the olive branches above. The air smells of crushed thyme and sun-warmed stone. A servant appears at the edge of the path, a young boy, eyes lowered, holding a book of Persian customs. Alexander accepts it. He turns the pages slowly, but not with wonder, with calculation. He will not just defeat the Persians. He will understand them. He will speak their tongue, wear their silks, marry their blood. Even now, the empire is assembling itself inside him, silently. You watch him rise and cross the garden with purposeful grace. His shadow touches each leaf in passing. He is no longer simply learning. He is becoming the story others will tell in candlelit silence, in rooms like this. And somewhere, deep in the future, a storyteller whispers these same lines, and you are there too, walking behind him through ancient grass. Nothing moves, not even you, but the story continues. Aristotle, in the distance, watches him go. The tutor says nothing, but somewhere in his silence is the ache of someone who knows their teachings may one day be used to set the world aflame. But for now, there is still time. Still space between the lesson and the sword. Still shadow between the boy and the man he must become. The breeze shifts. You're still there. You pass another closed door. The stone beneath your feet softens into earth. Light filters through the olive trees in speckled gold, and the air begins to tremble. Not with voices, but with the sound of hooves. Hooves that strike the dust like thunder still half asleep. The courtyard ahead is wide, sun-baked, and silent, except for one. A black horse spins at the center, wild-eyed and foam-laced, its nostrils flared like twin bellows, its hooves scattering gravel into the air like sparks. No one rides him. No one dares. Grooms retreat in frustration. Men shout, trying to catch his reins, but the horse bolts again. Too quick, too furious, a thing born of stormlight and panic. You feel the tension bloom like thunderclouds in your chest. Then you see him. The boy steps into the circle. He is 15 perhaps, and smaller than the soldiers. But the wind bows to him differently. His eyes do not blink. His breath does not falter. He watches the horse, not its body, but its shadow, the way it dances, the direction it throws its gaze. Then he speaks, softly, not to the men, but to the beast. His fear is of his own shadow, he says. He thinks it's a predator. That's why he runs from the sun. The silence is heavier now. Alexander turns the horse toward the east, so its shadow trails behind them, swallowed in its wake. He does not rush. His hand, open and low, brushes the air beside the animal's mouth like a painter with no canvas. You can feel the other men holding their breath. And slowly, impossibly, the black horse stills. His head dips. Not submission, something more sacred. Recognition. Alexander mounts without saddle, without aid, and the creature carries him forward like a crown lifted onto wind. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The crowd erupts, applause, gasps, wonder. But Alexander hears only one voice, Philip, his father, laughing through a sudden shine of tears. "Find a kingdom worthy of you," he says, "for Macedon is too small." The boy does not smile. He nods once, already understanding. The metaphor is born beneath the hooves. This horse, Bucephalus, is not merely a mount. He is a mirror, a challenge, a creature untamable to most, but not to one who listens through silence. And this is how Alexander rules, not by force, but by understanding what others fear to see. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. Later, in the cool shade of the stables, the boy brushes the horse's flank gently. They are alone now, the clamor of the crowd faded into memory. He speaks not in words, but in presence. The horse lowers his head, ears twitching toward the boy's heartbeat. You feel it too. 2 pulses, 1 rhythm, then the sound of sandals. A companion, Hephaestion, watches from the stable door. "So," he says softly, "you plan to tame the world as well?" Alexander smiles for the first time that day. Only the parts that refuse to listen. They laugh, the sound quiet and young and bright. But even here, in this small courtyard, you sense the larger shape forming, the shadow of empires, the rustle of future battles like thunder on the far edge of a sky still blue. For if a boy can tame a beast that no grown man dares approach, what else might yield to his hand? You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the dust where hoofprints scatter like stars, a story begins to gallop. The silence is heavier now. The palace halls no longer echo with lectures or hooves, they echo with toasts. Laughter rings too sharply, and smiles stretch just a little too wide. You find yourself standing at the edge of a great banquet. The torches flare higher than they need to. The wine flows thicker than water. And somewhere beneath the music and perfume, something sharp waits, unspoken, unsheathed. You drift past long tables burdened with figs, roasted lamb, golden chalices. The scent of cloves and crushed grapes weaves into the air like a spell. Tonight is meant to celebrate, but celebration is just ceremony pressed against time's edge. King Philip stands at the center. His armor shines despite the hour. He is tall, sure, and smiling, but behind his eyes, a storm brews. The man who crushed cities and reformed Macedonia into steel now raises a cup to a wedding he barely blesses. Alexander watches from a step below. Not a child, not yet a king. His expression is unreadable. The lion's shadow still clings to him. He has returned from exile, sent away once by his father in a blaze of wounded pride. Now he returns like thunder muted only by timing. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Hephaestion stands nearby, never far. Their gazes meet for a heartbeat, and it's as if they say everything without words. The room is thick with tension. Old generals murmur. New alliances form in glances. The scent of betrayal lies beneath the incense. Philip gestures grandly. "To unity," he declares, "and the future of Macedonia and Epirus." But not everyone drinks. The crowd shifts. A man moves differently than the others, light on his feet, too light. His robe flutters with purpose, concealing something cold beneath. You pass another closed door. A dagger flashes. The king stumbles. The music doesn't stop fast enough. Then, silence. Philip lies in blood, his golden cup toppled. The assassins do not flee far. They do not flee at all. Their names barely spoken before they're erased by steel. Alexander does not weep. He kneels, not beside the corpse, but beside the moment. For this he was not meant to feel, only to act. And when he rises, the world shifts. Ash drifts in the quiet. In the days that follow, the air thickens with rumor. Some whisper that Olympius, the mother serpent, planned the king's death. Others hint at Alexander's own blade behind the curtain. But no truth settles. Only the outcome. A crown. Still warm. You find yourself in the antechamber of power. The walls here are painted not with gods, but with maps. And Alexander stands before them now, not in robes, but in armor, not in mourning, but in fire. The nobles gather. Some challenge him, speak of older bloodlines, of stronger claims. He responds not with words, but with action. Rivals are cut down. Rebellious generals disappear into the quiet forever. He does not seize the throne. He simply becomes it. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the palace garden, the torchlight glints off wet leaves. Olympia stands beside a statue of Dionysus, her eyes alight with something unholy. She has cleared the path for her son. She has whispered destiny into his ear since he first formed syllables, and now it blooms. Alexander kneels at the altar, not in grief, not in prayer, but in promise. He whispers to the gods, old and foreign both. He tells them, I am ready. And perhaps, somewhere, they answer. The breeze shifts. You're still there. Aegean wears mourning like a veil of smoke and prophecy. The stone roads tremble faintly with the footfalls of horses, soldiers, whispers. You walk among them now, not seen, not felt, only present. The city holds its breath, wrapped in a strange hush, as if all the wind has retreated into the mountains to watch what happens next. Alexander walks slowly up the steps of the royal tomb, his sandals darkened by ash and dust. Above him, banners hang limp, soaked by dew and grief. Behind him trail companions, half warriors, half shadows. And behind them still, silence, wide and waiting. He wears no crown yet, only the weight of it. The tomb of his father is open, lined with gold and fire, the air thick with the scent of cedar smoke and unspoken vows. You pass beneath the arch. Inside, the walls shimmer with painted lions and chariots. A line of kings stretches back into time like a river made of bronze and blood. Philip lies still now. His eyes no longer blaze. His sword rests beside him, untouched. His voice, once thunder, has folded into the dust. Alexander kneels, but not like a son, like a storm made calm only for a moment, like a king who does not yet wear his title aloud. You almost forget this isn't a memory. He speaks softly to the dead. You hear no words, only a feeling, a merging of grief and promise. He does not cry. He does not break. He rises. And with that motion, the room seems to tilt. Outside, the city stirs. Word has spread. The king is dead, and his son, young, unproven, lion-eyed, claims the throne. The nobles gather. Some offer their loyalty like silk, others like daggers held behind their backs. Alexander meets them in the assembly hall. No torches, no fanfare, just the sharp smell of sweat and old wood and the future pressing its weight against the doors. I am king, he says. No one laughs. The generals exchange glances. A few kneel. Others hesitate. So he acts. Those who question him vanish like fog at sunrise. The army swears by his name. The court bends. The old alliances are reforged with blood. In a small chamber lit by a single oil lamp, Olympias watches it unfold. She says nothing, her fingers wrapped around a bronze snake bracelet. She has raised him for this, fed him myth with milk, taught him to taste fire in every breath. And now it has begun. A bell rings again, softer this time. In the days that follow, Alexander tours the land not as heir, but as sovereign. In Delphi, he walks alone beneath the laurel trees. In Thessaly, he gathers the cavalry with a glance. In Athens, he is both hailed and feared. He brings order with silence and strategy, like chess pieces moved by moonlight. He visits the graves of kings not to honor them, but to surpass them. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the stillness before sleep, you walk beside him one evening, along the Peneus River where reeds rustle like old pages. The water reflects his face, young, but older than the stars in his eyes. He whispers, "What is a crown, if not a question pressed into metal?" He leans down, cups the water in his hand, and lets it fall. Somewhere far off, a drumbeat sounds, not of celebration, but of preparation. Macedon is not enough. The crown fits too tightly. And across the horizon, where the sun turns blood orange against the mountains, the shape of Persia waits like a shadow too large for any map. The silence is heavier now. You move across a city steeped in dreams older than even kings remember. Thebes, a name thick with myth, a place where gods once whispered through stone. Its gates are high, its pride higher still. But pride is flammable. Alexander arrives not in thunder, but in shadow. His soldiers march light on the road, their armor covered in dust. Macedon now bends to his name, but Greece does not kneel so easily. Thebes has heard the whispers, "The boy is too young. The fire will die. The empire will devour itself." They believe freedom still sleeps within their walls, but they forget. He is not a boy anymore. You almost forget this isn't a memory. It begins slowly. A rumor, a rebellion, a spark caught in olive branches. Thebes rises in defiance, pulling Athens' gaze with it. They shut their gates. They kill the Macedonian garrison. Alexander does not send envoys. He sends silence. And then, movement. His army arrives in days, not weeks. They do not tire. They do not speak. He gives the city one chance. Open your gates. They spit in his direction instead. And so he begins. You drift above the fields now. Soldiers form like ink across parchment. Phalanxes unfold like metallic flowers. Siege towers, rammed wood, and iron kisses bloom against the outer wall. Inside Thebes, the people sing, but their voices tremble at the edges. Songs cannot hold back fate. The first breach is small, then wider. Macedonians pour in like thunder given flesh. Thebes does not fall quietly. The streets resist. Mothers shield their sons. Men clutch broken spears. But resistance is a candle in a storm. Ash drifts in the quiet. You follow Alexander through the smoke. His eyes do not weep. He moves like someone solving a problem, not raising a city. But behind him, the fire walks tall. Temples crack. Statues fall into dust. Even the house of Pindar, the great poet, is spared only because Alexander loved his verses. The rest? Stone turned to ruin. Names turned to silence. A warning carved into earth. You almost forget this isn't a memory. When it ends, 6,000 are dead. 30,000 more are sold into slavery. Thebes, once the jewel of Boeotia, becomes a caution told by candlelight. Alexander walks among the rubble with unblinking calm. To him, it is not cruelty. It is necessity. He looks up at the sky, ash coating his cheek, and murmurs, "Let them see." And they do. All of Greece sees. The rebellion dies not in battle, but in smoke. Athens stays quiet. Corinth, subdued. Delphi, reverent. Even Sparta does not speak. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. Back in the tent, Hephaestion studies a map by torchlight. "You broke them," he says. Alexander nods. "I needed only one city to teach the rest." He does not smile. He drinks from a silver cup as if it holds not wine, but consequence. And outside the walls of Thebes, the wind blows softly through ashes that were once homes, once songs, once histories. And you stand in the silence after, and feel how power tastes when mixed with flame. The silence still hums. And then, waves. Endless, murmuring, ancient. The sea unfurls before you like a silver tapestry, its folds stitched with wind and memory. You stand on the western shore of Asia Minor, beside a boy no longer searching for the world, but stepping forward to take it. Alexander watches the Hellespont stretch before him. The strait glimmers with morning. Behind him, Macedon, Thebes, youth. Ahead, Persia, and the sky heavy with unspoken fate. The sun sits low, casting his armor in amber and fire. He does not speak at first, only breathes, deep, still, as if preparing to become something more than flesh. You almost forget this isn't a memory. He boards the ship with quiet purpose. No ceremony, no crown. Only the lion's pelt, slung across his shoulders like a mantle of myth. The breeze tangles through his hair as the vessel groans into motion. Water foams beneath the oars, and you drift beside him, invisible, watching the land pull away. Halfway across the Hellespont, he stands. The sky above holds its breath. He lifts a goblet of seawater, pours it into the waves, and speaks to Poseidon, not as a supplicant, but as a son returning. Then he casts a spear forward into the foreign shore. It lands upright in the sand. The gesture is clear. This land is not his inheritance. It is his conquest. You pass another closed door. The crossing is smooth, but the weight is immense. Behind him sail 37,000 soldiers. Not an army. A belief stretched across water. At Abydos, his feet touch Asia for the first time. The earth beneath his boots is dry, golden, wide. The kind of earth that carries empires in its bones. He kneels, not in worship, but in recognition. "I am here," he says. The wind answers by curling through the reeds. The soldiers follow, row upon row. Men from Macedonia, Thessaly, Illyria, veterans and boys alike. They speak in different dialects but march with one rhythm, and at their head, a man whose gaze reaches farther than any map. You pass another closed door. That night, campfires bloom across the plain like fallen stars. The sea behind them sighs. The men sharpen blades. Some pray, others sleep. Alexander does neither. He walks the edge of camp, past murmuring tents, past shadows whispering his name. He stops before a tree, old, twisted, alive. Beneath it, he buries a dagger, his first, from childhood, the blade he used to learn, to defend, to survive. "I will not need you anymore," he whispers. "I have become you." The sky listens, cloudless. He turns toward the east, and in the stillness, he sees it already. Granicus, Issus, Gaugamela, Babylon, Susa, Persepolis. But not yet. For now, there is only the hush before the storm, the still breath before the lion roars. You almost forget this isn't a memory. And in that moment, by a shore that separates myth from march, you feel the pulse of history begin to quicken. Not a man crossing the sea. A force. A dream. Walking on waves. The silence is heavier now. You find yourself beside a river. Not calm, but coiled. The Granicus winds through Anatolia like a silver snake, swollen with spring rains and shadowed by stone cliffs. Its banks are too steep, its current too wild. And yet, across its churned surface waits Persia. Spears upright, shields curved like crescents, eyes fixed on a boy they do not yet fear. Alexander arrives at dusk. He does not wait for the perfect moment. He makes it. His generals advise delay, speak of high ground, of prudence. He listens, then declines. "I do not steal victories," he says. "I claim them." You almost forget this isn't a memory. The sun dips low, and in its dying light, the army gathers. Dust curls like incense. Horses stamp. Helmets gleam. The air thickens with the scent of oil, sweat, and anticipation. Alexander rides to the front, Bucephalus beneath him, calm, coiled, eager. The water foams beside them, dark and fast. His soldiers wait, silent, waiting for fear, perhaps. But he does not give it to them. Instead, he speaks low and slow. "We cross together, we strike together, and history begins now." Then he charges, not with a trumpet's scream, but with a storm's certainty. The hooves splash first, then scatter. The Macedonians pour into the river like iron into a mold, shields high, spears lifted like lightning waiting to descend. Across the current, Persian cavalry brace. Their armor shines like bronze stars. Arrows hiss through the dusk. The water turns red before the banks are reached. The clash is soundless in memory, but it echoes in your chest. Alexander leads not from behind, but at the point. He strikes like a thought made flesh. His blade finds armor gaps, throat lines. His breath steady. His eyes never blink. A Persian noble wheels to meet him. They clash near the water's edge, blades ringing like bells in a ruined temple. The man swings high. Alexander raises his arm, but the blow would have split his skull had not Clytus the Black, his companion, slashed the air and saved him. Blood mists into the fading sun. A bell rings again, softer this time. The tide turns. The Macedonian phalanx presses from behind. Long spears, the sarissas, fan out like the ribs of some enormous beast. The Persians, so proud, so many, begin to break, not in cowardice, but in disbelief. The boy did not hesitate. The river did not stop him. You almost forget this isn't a memory. When it ends, the bank is strewn with the wreckage of war. Helmets cracked, sandals adrift in reeds, banners wet with river mud. Alexander does not cheer. He kneels beside the dead, whispers a prayer not to gods, but to remembrance. And for the Persians who died with honor, he buries them with rites. He wants the East to see. He is not just a conqueror. He is a mirror. He is thunder that understands the mountain it shakes. The stars blink awake. The moon rises over still water. Soldiers sleep. Horses whinny in the distance. But Alexander stands awake, at the river's edge, as if waiting for someone unseen to arrive. The breeze shifts. You're still there. The river speaks softly now, of beginnings, of blood, of things set in motion that cannot be reversed. Alexander watches its current, perhaps seeing something further ahead, something no general, no philosopher, no oracle has yet named. And in that hush, you wonder, was this a battle, or a door swinging open into destiny? You pass another closed door. It creaks gently on its hinges before fading behind you, and suddenly the air feels warmer, laced with incense, thick with murmured omens. You are in Phrygia now, in the heart of Gordium, a city not famed for armies or towers, but for a single knot. A knot older than memory. A knot that hums beneath the skin like a distant drum. The day is dry, the sky a pale white. Dust hangs in the air like forgotten breath. Alexander walks ahead of you through a sun-drenched courtyard, his pace unhurried, his gaze sharp as polished bronze. The temple of Zeus rises before him, a squat structure of weathered stone, cradling a relic no sword has dared touch, the Gordian knot. It rests upon a yoke of ancient wood, wrapped in twisted cords of bark, silk, leather. No beginning, no end. The strands loop and tangle in ways that defy logic, like the cosmos drawn blindfolded. The prophecy is simple. Whosoever unties it shall rule all of Asia. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Alexander circles the cart, slowly, eyes narrowed. He lifts one end, finds no slack, pulls another, finds only more confusion. His men watch from a respectful distance, holding their breath as if a misstep might unweave fate itself. He kneels, not in reverence, in curiosity. His fingers brush the knot's surface, rough, aged, sacred. He tries a loop, then another. Nothing gives. The cords laugh in silence. But the boy is not merely a student of puzzles. He is a breaker of symbols. He stands, draws his sword, and cuts it clean through. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The strands fall like dead snakes to the ground. The wind gusts, not loud, but with intent. The temple door creaks softly behind you, as if something ancient has been released. The men murmur. Some cheer, some hesitate. But Alexander is unmoved. It does not matter how, he says, only that it is done. The whisper spreads through camp like wildfire in dry brush. He has solved the Gordian knot, not with logic, but with will, not through patience, but through power. And so, the metaphor is born. Where others debate, Alexander decides. Where others untangle, he severs. Where others wait for the stars to align, he walks through them. That night, the torchlight in the palace court dances high. Shadows move along the colonnades. Musicians pluck soft notes that fall like leaves. But Alexander remains apart. He walks alone among the columns, the sword still sheathed at his side, the broken strands of the knot laid at the temple door behind him. He speaks to no one. His silence is louder than any proclamation. The silence is heavier now. In a nearby room, Hephaestion pours wine into a bronze bowl and murmurs, "One knot, one empire." Alexander does not answer. He runs his fingers across a map stretched over the table, cities marked in charcoal, rivers curled like sleeping dragons, mountains sketched in pale ink. He looks east, always east. You stand beside him in that room, the torchlight flickering over both your faces, and you realize this was never about the knot. It was about the answer he carried before even arriving. And yet, something in you wonders. What else might he cut instead of solve? What other knots of the heart or world might unravel beneath the blade? The stars blink above Gordium, quiet and ancient, and the road to Persia lies ahead, no longer as a question, but as a promise. The breeze shifts. You're still there. The scent of brine wraps around you as the sun presses down in sheets of gold. The coast of Phoenicia gleams like hammered bronze, and beyond it, floating just offshore like a mirage, stands Tyre, an island city, proud, ancient, unyielding. Its towers rise from the sea like the spines of a stone leviathan, and its people believe the waves will protect them, as they always have. Alexander watches from the mainland. His sandals stir sand and rubble, his brow creased, not with rage, but with design. He offers peace first. They refuse. They do not fear him. Not yet. You almost forget this isn't a memory. You walk the coastline with him. Rocky, sun-blasted, harsh. The water hisses against the rocks. His men speak behind him, of impossible sieges, of walls too far to reach, of ships they do not have. Alexander kneels, picks up a pebble, rolls it between his fingers, looks toward the distant gate of Tyre as though it were already in ruins. "We'll build a road," he says. The men go silent. "A causeway," across the sea. And so it begins. You pass another closed door. Stone by stone, they build. From the mainland, a narrow tongue of earth begins to stretch across the turquoise water. It takes days, then weeks. The Tyrians laugh at first, then hurl missiles, then set their own ships aflame and send them drifting toward the causeway. Alexander watches it burn, does not flinch. He rebuilds. He gathers wood from every village, every grove, cuts down cedars older than his generals, hires Phoenician sailors from rival ports. He turns rivals into allies, allies into builders, builders into warriors, and the causeway grows. Each foot forward feels like defying Poseidon himself. The sea resists, but Alexander insists. Ash drifts in the quiet. The Tyrians build towers of their own. Their archers rain fire on the workers. Still, the stones rise. Siege towers groan forward on iron wheels, their tips high as mastheads. You drift through the haze of smoke and salt. Ships slam into shore. The clang of iron rings like a bitter prayer. One day a ship strikes the wall. Macedonians pour through the breach like blood through a cracked vein. The battle spills into the city, stone to stone, house to house. Tyre screams. The island no longer floats. It bleeds. You almost forget this isn't a memory. 7 months. 7 long months. And when the city finally falls, it is not in silence, but in sobbing flame. Alexander walks the streets slowly, not as a conqueror exulting, but as one who has dragged the sea itself to heel. Thousands are captured, hundreds executed. The harbor, once filled with proud ships, now holds only reflections of smoke and fire. That night, Alexander stands on the causeway. His cloak snapped by the breeze. The waves lap gently at his boots. He does not speak, but his silence is a roar. Even the gods seem to quiet. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. The causeway never disappears. Even centuries later, Tyre is no longer an island. The path remains, stone and dust and echo. You feel the weight of it under your own feet, as if you too have walked across a sea to reach a dream. And you wonder, what kind of man forces the ocean to make room for him? And how far will he walk, now that the waves no longer say no? Later that night, the torches fade behind you. The sea is a rumor now. The sky opens wide, dusted in stars, and the world feels endless. You travel with him, not as soldier or subject, but as shadow, into the western desert, where time folds inward and silence reigns. You ride beside Alexander's caravan. The wheels creak, the camels groan softly. But otherwise, the journey is quiet, too quiet. Each grain of sand whispers like parchment turning in a forgotten temple. Ahead, the oracle of Siwa, deep in the Libyan desert, older than Greece, more enduring than war. He seeks answers. He seeks himself. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The dunes rise and fall like the backs of sleeping giants. The sun is a pale god, and the air shimmers like cloth stitched with fire. Days pass. The desert shows no kindness. Water runs low. The guides lose the path. But Alexander does not turn back. He does not question. He listens. And then, a bird. A pair of ravens, dark as obsidian, circling overhead. They cry out, sharp and knowing, then veer westward. The guides follow without words, and in the distance, green, palms, a glint of stone, a temple rising from the sand like a half-buried thought. Siwa. You pass another closed door. The priests greet him not with challenge, but recognition. Their eyes are deep wells. They do not ask who he is. They lead him in silence through shadowed halls scented with myrrh and dust. At the heart of the temple, the chamber narrows. Here, the god speaks, not through thunder or flame, but through the stillness of stone. The oracle leans forward. His breath is slow, his voice lower than wind, and Alexander asks, not for victory, but for truth. Am I the son of Zeus? The priest does not answer in words you understand. But Alexander steps out as if the sky itself has kissed his brow. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Outside, the desert stretches on, but something has changed. The light around him seems softer, or sharper, as though he walks in a different direction than the sun. His soldiers murmur of madness, of pride, of blasphemy, but they do not speak too loudly, because he returns different, not visibly, but inward. He no longer doubts the path ahead. He carries the silence of Siwa in his chest. That night, under the palm trees, he does not eat. He writes, and when the wind stirs the pages, he places a single stone atop them, the same white stone offered to him by the oracle, carved with a symbol no one dares translate. Hephaestion approaches. Did he speak? He asks. Alexander nods, slowly. He reminded me. Of what? That I am not walking toward my destiny. I am walking inside it. The silence still hums. You sit in the sand, just beyond the firelight. You hear the desert breathing. You feel the edge of something vast and old curling into the soles of your feet. And you wonder, is he divine? Or merely the only man who listens when the gods are quiet? In the desert of Siwa, the stars blink slowly overhead, and one by one, the soldiers fall asleep. But Alexander does not. His eyes remain open, reflecting something that has no name. The silence is heavier now, not the hush of sleep or sand, but the stillness that comes before a storm chooses where to land. You stand on a wide, flat plain under a sky swollen with starlight. The earth here feels taut, as if it remembers what's coming, as if it has already soaked in the blood. This is Gaugamela. The name itself coils in the throat like smoke, a word not yet written in marble or song, but tonight it will be. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Alexander rides the lines before dawn, cloaked in shadow, eyes gleaming like polished bronze. Behind him, his army breathes as one. 30,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry, veterans, brothers, sons, and across the plain, 100,000 Persians, perhaps more. They shimmer in the distance like a mirage of death. Banners flutter like feathers on fire. Darius III waits behind them, high on his golden chariot, beneath a sun-embossed parasol. His army spills across the plain in every direction. Elephants, archers, scythed chariots meant to rip through men like cloth. And still, Alexander does not falter. He surveys the land like a chessboard, feels the wind, listens to the silence, and in that hush, he rearranges fate. Hephaestion rides beside him. They outnumber us 5-1, he says. Alexander smiles softly. Then they are surrounded. A bell rings again, softer this time. The sun breaks the horizon. Trumpets cry out like wounded gods. The Persians charge first. Horses stampede. Chariots roar. The earth shakes. But Alexander holds. His lines shift. Bend. Do not break. He draws the Persian left wing forward, pulls them like thread from a tightly stitched cloak. Then, he moves. He leads his companion cavalry like a dagger slipping between ribs. Fast, sharp, clean, straight toward Darius. You fly beside him now, weightless in the dream, watching as dust billows in gold clouds and steel flashes like lightning before the thunder. His sword rises, falls, rises again. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Darius sees him coming. Panic blooms like ink in water. The Persian king turns, flees. Again. It is not the first time, but it is the most final. His army watches their son retreat, and without it, they dissolve. Not all, but enough. The scythed chariots veer, the elephants turn, the center crumbles, and the Macedonians press forward, tired, wounded, elated. The battle ends in fragments, screams, whispers, silence, and Gaugamela becomes a graveyard for 1,000 dreams. That night, the plain is quiet again, but changed. You walk among the discarded weapons, the broken spears. The feathers from fallen plumes flutter in the breeze like moths looking for light. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Alexander stands on a rise. The moon touches only half his face. He watches the stars, doesn't speak. He holds no crown. He wears no wreath. But Babylon lies open before him. The east has no more shields to raise. A general approaches. "You are now king of Asia," he says. Alexander does not answer right away. He closes his eyes, breathes in the wind that tastes of dust and iron, and whispers, "No, I am only just beginning." You pass another closed door. It swings soundlessly behind you, and you enter a city not broken by war, but opened by awe. Babylon does not burn. It bows. The sun climbs lazily over golden bricks and hanging gardens heavy with dew. Birds call from fig-laced balconies. The Tigris gleams in the distance, winding like a mirror for the gods. This is no battlefield. This is an inheritance. You walk behind Alexander as he enters the city gates. The crowds do not scream. They murmur like a prayer being remembered. Petals fall from above, roses, lilies, jasmine, blanketing the path in soft surrender. He wears no helmet now, no armor, only a cloak of deep indigo that brushes the earth like a promise. The silence still hums. Babylon does not test him with blades. It welcomes him with incense, with doors swung wide, with women lining balconies, their eyes curious, cautious, glittering like polished lapis. One of them watches longer than the rest. The Queen Mother, Sisigambis, stands beneath a canopy of woven gold, her gaze steady. She mistakes Hephaestion for the king and bows before him. Alexander touches her shoulder gently, correcting the mistake with a smile. "He too is Alexander," he says, and her expression softens into something like respect, or perhaps understanding. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Inside the palace, the walls are painted with lions mid-roar, with gardens suspended between marble arches, with constellations that no Greek has ever named. Alexander walks through them like one who has seen their reflections in dreams. The throne room yawns before him, but he does not sit. Not yet. Instead, he studies the throne as if it were a blade. Useful, dangerous, not to be held lightly. He turns, takes a step away, and gazes out across the wide balcony where Babylon stretches beneath a copper sky. The breeze shifts. You're still there. He asks the satraps for no tribute. He keeps their priests, their rituals. He speaks their names properly, and still, he changes everything. Coins are minted with his profile, temples open in his name, but he does not demand worship. Not here. Not yet. At night, he walks the gardens alone, where trees drip pomegranate and figs. Water channels hum like distant flutes. He listens to them as though they might reveal the shape of what comes next. Hephaestion joins him beneath the shadow of a tamarisk. They say nothing for a long while. Then Alexander asks, "Does a lion weep when it inherits a crown?" Hephaestion replies, "Only if it loved the one who wore it before." You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the quiet of the inner chamber, Sisigambis weaves gold thread into an offering. She places it before the statue of Marduk, the old god of order, and she whispers, not a prayer, but a question. Will he build or break? And outside, the new king does neither. He simply breathes. For tonight, he is not the sword. He is the shadow beside it. A breath before fire, a stillness before thunder. And in the east, the moon rises, pale and perfect, over a city that sleeps with its doors unlocked. For now. The silence is heavier now, not the stillness of peace, but the breath before punishment. You feel it in the stones, in the cold wind from the Zagros mountains, in the scent of fire already imagined. Persepolis waits ahead, not defiant, not trembling, just waiting. You stand beside Alexander as he approaches the city, the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire. Columns stretch skyward like arms frozen mid-prayer. Gates carved with bulls and lions loom above. Every surface gleams with memory. It is not a city built for defense. It was built to impress the gods. And now the gods are silent. You almost forget this isn't a memory. He does not need to fight here. The satraps surrender. The guards open the gates. The priests bow low, robes brushing ash that hasn't fallen yet. Alexander enters on foot, not horseback. No trumpet, no blood. But the hush that trails behind him is louder than war. Inside the hall of 100 columns, he stands beneath the gaze of Darius's ancestors. Their stone faces watch him with frozen pride. He says nothing, only walks, only feels. You pass another closed door. Days pass. He lingers. Persepolis offers its treasures, gold stacked like grain, silks embroidered with maps of forgotten rivers, scrolls inked with secrets of the stars. He accepts them, but not hungrily, as if waiting for a feeling that never arrives. Then one night, wine spills. Laughter rings too loud. Torches sway. A woman dances. Thais, Athenian courtesan, lover of firelight, raises her goblet and cries, "Let the city that burned Athens now burn in return." Alexander looks up. His eyes shine, not with rage, with release. He nods, and the torches are thrown. Ash drifts in the quiet. The palace is firewood. Drapes catch like breath. Flames climb the cedar beams like old grudges finally remembering their names. The air howls. The stars vanish behind black smoke. You walk among the ruin as if in a fevered dream. The stone lions blink red. The frescoes melt. You smell cedar, parchment, perfume, and fury. He stands atop the terrace, cloaked in firelight, watching it fall. No crown, no speech, just flame reflecting in his eyes. Hephaestion approaches. "This was not conquest," he says. "No," Alexander murmurs. "It was a funeral." You almost forget this isn't a memory. For a moment it feels like the end, but it is only the middle. Persepolis falls not because it stood against him, but because it reminded him of what needed ending. Darius is still fleeing. The true throne still calls. But this is the symbol undone. He does not look back as the embers rise. They drift upward like the souls of forgotten kings. You pass another closed door. Later, in a tent far from the glow, Alexander cannot sleep. His fingers smell of smoke. His voice is quiet when he says, "It should have felt like justice." Hephaestion does not reply. He only sits beside him, watching the sky reclaim its stars. And somewhere, in the ash, a seed is planted. Not of remorse, but of something heavier. Legacy. The silence still hums, but now it's thinner, threadbare and cold, drawn out across ridgelines and wind tunnels. You breathe slower here. The air is sharp, clean, unforgiving. The land stretches upward like a challenge. You are in the high passes now, beneath the frozen brow of the Hindu Kush. Snow dusts the ground like sifted bone. The wind whispers in a tongue that forgets cities and empires. And still, Alexander climbs. You walk beside him, boots crunching into frostbitten rock. His cloak is heavy with ice. Bucephalus exhales steam like a furnace of war. They said this was impossible, the path too narrow, the cold too cruel, the people beyond it, not worth the price. But Alexander listens only to the silence between heartbeats, and it tells him to go forward. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The army marches in bands. Some wrap their hands in strips of torn tunics. Others press on barefoot, their skin cracked, bleeding. Horses fall, are buried beneath frost. The snow turns pink in patches. Still, they walk, because he does. You pass another closed door. Days blend. Mountains rise higher. Valleys appear, then vanish like traps. The wind changes direction without warning. Men go missing, some taken by avalanches, others by madness. And still, he leads, not with speeches, but by never stopping. In the high place between clouds and regret, he reaches the ridge. He stands there, silent, wind-torn, eyes narrowed. He sees what no map has promised. The Indus Valley, vast and gold in the southern haze. And farther still, more. Always more. He does not smile, but something inside him sharpens. Nothing moves, not even you, but the story continues. That night, they camp in a crevice between two cliffs. The wind howls above them, like wolves that forgot how to bite. Hephaestion lights a fire with hands stiff from cold. We've come beyond the edge of the known, he says. Alexander holds a snowflake on his finger until it melts. Then the known will follow us. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In a dream that night, he sees wings, not eagles, but something older, burning birds circling a mountain peak too high for gods. He does not wake sweating, only breathing slower, deeper, as if the mountain has breathed him in. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. By morning, the storm breaks, and in that thin golden light, you see it. Not victory, not exhaustion, but transformation. He is no longer a man conquering nations. He is a man surpassing geography, and the mountains, once feared, now carry his shadow. You pass another closed door. It doesn't creak this time. It sighs. And behind it, warmth, flickering torchlight, the sweet, heady scent of wine, and something else. Something bitter curling beneath it. You're in Bactria now, far from home, far from Babylon. The mountains loom behind you, the desert still ahead. The men are tired, restless, their boots worn thin, their hearts thinner. Tonight, Alexander has called for celebration. Inside the hall, goblets clink, musicians play, meat sizzles on silver trays. The torches flicker in rhythms that feel too fast. You drift between the laughter, and you see it. The tension, like a bowstring pulled too far, like breath held too long. He drinks too deeply tonight. His cheeks glow with wine. His eyes shimmer with something far more potent. Clytus is here. You almost forget this isn't a memory. He stands tall, one of Alexander's oldest warriors, a man who once saved his life at the Granicus, who bled for him, who watched him rise. But tonight, Clytus is tired of silence. He speaks of the old ways, of Philip, of Macedon, of men who did not kneel to Persians or take on their dress. His voice is not angry, at first, but it grows. He speaks of betrayal, of how Alexander no longer sees with mortal eyes, how he surrounds himself with sycophants and sages who speak in riddles and flattery. Hephaestion's knuckles whiten around a goblet. The air thickens. Alexander laughs, softly, then sharply, then not at all. You pass another closed door. Clytus does not stop. You owe your life to men like me, he says, not to Zeus, or oracles, or dreams. Alexander stands. His voice is steady, but his breath is not. The wine sloshes in his hand like blood already spilled. The room falls silent. Then a dagger is drawn, not with ceremony, not with warning. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Clitus takes a step forward, still speaking, still brave, still trying to reach the boy beneath the crown, and Alexander thrusts. The blade finds the dark. The breath escapes. The music stops. Clitus collapses at his feet. No war cry, no farewell, just silence, and the sound of something breaking. The silence is heavier now. Alexander stares at the body. His hand still clutches the hilt. His chest heaves. No one moves, not even you. But the story continues. He drops the dagger, falls to his knees, cries out, not in rage, in something deeper, in something that echoes too far to name. He tries to take back the moment with his hands, but time is not a soldier. It does not obey. He will not eat for days, will not sleep, will tear his garments, will beg for death. But Clitus will not rise. You drift backward from the scene, your feet slow, your breath cold. Outside, the moon hangs low, watching, unblinking, pale. And you wonder, what happens when a god kills a friend and knows it? Later that night, the wind curls through the canvas flaps like a serpent looking for warmth. The torches sputter. The soldiers sleep fitfully, if at all. Somewhere in the darkness, wolves sing their hunger to the snow. And Alexander does not sleep. He stands at the edge of the world again. But this time, the world has no edge, only heights. You're with him now, in the shadow of the Hindu Kush, where the land has forgotten how to welcome footsteps. Mountains swell like gods lying on their backs, cloaked in ice and sky. The trails are no longer trails. They're scars, paths cut into cliffs by desperation and time. His army follows, not out of fear, not out of love, but because he has made the impossible seem like sunrise, inevitable. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Snowdrifts reach the waists of men. Frost settles in their beards, their lungs. The air is thin, too thin. Men speak in gasps, and horses collapse with eyes frozen open. Still, they move. You pass another closed door. One man dies beside a glacier, his body curling toward the mountain like he wants to be part of it. Another slips, his scream swallowed by 1,000 feet of silence. No one turns back, because he doesn't. Alexander leads them up narrow passes, across frozen ridges, through avalanches that echo like thunder in a world without sky. He sleeps little, eats less, but his eyes gleam as if fire lives behind them. One morning the frost has painted his cloak white. He looks like he's been carved from the cliff, still, watching the path ahead. A bell rings again, softer this time. At night, the soldiers build fires in hollows and whisper of the valleys below, of wine, of warmth, of wives they left behind. But he listens to the wind instead. He speaks to no one, except the mountain. And in some dark way, the mountain answers, not in words, but in the fact that it does not kill him. You almost forget this isn't a memory. He loses men, dozens, maybe more, but each loss folds into his silence. He doesn't carry grief in his shoulders anymore. He carries it in his breath. Hephaestion walks beside him, their footsteps sometimes sinking in the snow. "Why do we keep going?" he asks once. Alexander points upward. "Because it's there." "And when there's nothing left?" Alexander does not answer, because he doesn't believe in that kind of emptiness. You pass another closed door. At the peak, there is no view, only sky, only whiteness. The land has disappeared beneath them. All that remains is this, the knowledge that they did what others would not. And that is enough. That night, beneath a cave of ice, he draws a map with his finger in the frost. A new map, one no one has ever seen. A place he hasn't been yet. A future still unwritten. And you wonder, what happens when a man climbs so high there's no one left to follow? The silence still hums, but it is softer now, warmer. The wind no longer bites. It brushes. The earth below your feet no longer shifts beneath avalanche and ice. You are in Bactria, where the hills roll like the curves of a sleeping animal, where pomegranate trees grow in quiet courtyards, and silk dances through open windows. Alexander has come down from the mountains, and something in him has changed. You walk beside him through narrow alleys scented with saffron and ash. Children peer at him from rooftops, their eyes wide but not afraid. The streets carry music, not celebration, curiosity. He does not bring swords into these homes. He brings attention. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The conquest of Bactria is slow, not because the land resists, but because it seduces. The people are sharp-eyed, proud. Their warriors vanish into cliffs, then reappear like ghosts. Alexander does not crush them. He courts them, and then he meets her. Roxana, daughter of a Bactrian noble, draped in crimson silk, her veil embroidered with suns. She moves like the wind just before a storm, quiet, but full of the promise to change everything. He sees her once, at a peace banquet, and everything around her dims, not with magic, with gravity. You pass another closed door. The wine flows. The elders speak in riddles, and Alexander, fresh from snow and sorrow, watches this girl pour wine into his cup with hands steadier than his own. Their eyes meet. Something ancient moves between them. He drinks. She turns. And the dream begins. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. In the weeks that follow, he courts her with patience foreign to him, not with gifts, with presence. He listens to her speak in a tongue he does not yet know. He watches her dance with her cousins beneath oil lamps. He asks questions not about her lineage, but her thoughts. One evening, she sits beside him in a stone garden, plucking petals from a flower that blooms only at dusk. "You burn like someone who does not fear fire," she says. "I am fire," he replies. She smiles. "Then I'll teach you how not to be consumed by yourself." You almost forget this isn't a memory. He marries her, not for alliance, not for conquest, but for something smaller, stranger, a need he does not yet understand. The men murmur. The generals raise eyebrows. "A foreign bride?" they whisper. But he does not explain himself. He weaves her hair with gold threads, holds her hand in public, honors her gods beside his own. She is not his possession. She is his mirror. And in her eyes, even he begins to look human. The breeze shifts. You're still there. That night, the drums echo through the hills. Candles float down the river like stars come to rest. In the garden, beneath a canopy of fig leaves and moonlight, Alexander presses his forehead to hers and exhales. Not power, peace. And you wonder, what happens when the fire that conquers the world finds a flame it does not wish to extinguish? The silence is heavier now, but it does not come from stillness. It comes from distance. You've crossed into the edge of another world. The rivers here move slower, but deeper. The trees grow taller, their roots twisting like sleeping serpents. And the gods have different names. You are in India, not as visitor, as invader. You walk beside Alexander as the canopy thickens above, turning the sky into green fire. His armor glints through the mist like a half-remembered star. The air clings. Every breath tastes of mango sap and sweat. The soldiers behind him grumble in tongues softened by heat. Their boots sink in mud instead of dust. The jungle does not bow. It watches. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Ahead lies the Hydaspes River, and beyond it, King Porus, towering, proud, astride an elephant. Alexander watches the animals from across the water. Their ears flap like sails. Their tusks gleam like ivory swords. The men atop them look like gods carved in motion. He's never fought beasts like these. He doesn't blink. You pass another closed door. The morning of the battle begins in fog. It rolls over the river like breath from the earth itself. Alexander moves at night, quiet, clever, leads a part of his army upstream, crosses where the banks narrow. Surprise is his ally, and thunder, his enemy. The battle erupts like a god's tantrum. Trumpets scream, elephants charge, the earth convulses. The Macedonians break formation. Some are trampled, some freeze. The beasts crash through phalanxes like waves through driftwood. But Alexander rides forward, always forward, through water, through blood, through shadow. He finds Porus midfield, tall as myth, proud as fire. The two kings face each other, one on horseback, the other on a creature that feels like the memory of some ancient storm. The silence still hums. Alexander does not challenge him with shouts. He maneuvers, draws the beast aside, orders archers to pierce the flanks. The elephants falter. The tide shifts, slowly, painfully. The Macedonians rally. They surround, they scream, and Porus, drenched in sweat and blood, dismounts last of all, his pride broken, but not his spine. He stands before Alexander, defeated and silent. "What do you wish of me?" Alexander asks. Porus raises his chin. "That you treat me like a king." And Alexander, smiling softly, replies, "You ask it as one." You almost forget this isn't a memory. The battle ends not with a crown taken, but with one returned. Porus is made satrap, his lands left to him. The elephants no longer war, they walk in tribute. The jungle exhales, and Alexander stands at the edge of a map grown too large to fold. A bell rings again, softer this time. That night the fireflies drift over the tents like wandering souls. The river sings a lullaby learned before empires. Hephaestion sharpens a blade. Alexander watches the stars, eyes open but turned inward. "There is always something stronger," he says. "Today it was elephants. Tomorrow, time." And beside him, in the shadows, the jungle listens. And you begin to wonder if even the conqueror dreams of walls he cannot climb. The silence is heavier now. It lies across the camp like wet cloth. Even the horses have stopped their restless stamping. Even the fire crackles more softly, reluctant to speak. You're at the far edge of the known. The soil here clings to your boots. The jungle presses in like breath on your neck. The skies crack open, and for the first time in months, it rains. Not a sprinkle, a deluge. Sheets of water pound the canvas tents, flatten the dust, blur the maps. The Hydaspes swells and spills, and even time seems to drown in it. Alexander stands beneath the downpour with his eyes open, face tilted upward, not as a man resisting, but receiving. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The monsoon has come, and with it, something softer, heavier than spears. Doubt. His soldiers sit in long lines under dripping awnings. Their food is soaked, their boots rot. The jungle speaks in new tongues, frogs, rustling vines, distant drums that may be thunder or not. The men murmur. They do not say, retreat. They say, home. You pass another closed door. He walks the rows of tents, saying nothing. He sees the eyes of men who followed him through rivers, deserts, mountains. Men who buried sons in snow, who watched comrades trampled beneath elephants. Now they look at him not with defiance, but distance. They are tired, not just in body, in spirit. And even Hephaestion speaks now in a quieter voice. There's nothing beyond this, he says. Only rain. Alexander doesn't answer. Not immediately. He stares at a puddle where the sky reflects itself. A map of water. A mirror of questions. Later he calls a meeting, not of kings, of soldiers. He speaks not of Persia or victory or gods. He speaks of rivers, of homes, of how glory must sometimes kneel to the body's slow undoing. And in that moment, something inside him folds gently inward. He does not break, but he bows. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The next morning, the rain still falls, but the decision is made. They will not go farther east. They will turn, not in shame, but in wisdom. Alexander stands alone as the first carts turn westward. His cloak soaks against his skin. His lion's pelt drips like it's crying. He says nothing, because in that silence, he honors them, not as subjects, as men. The breeze shifts. You're still there. And you wonder, is this what greatness looks like too? Not in the advance, but in the pause. As the rain weaves itself into the soil, the army marches away from the rising sun. And Alexander, he watches it one last time and does not chase it. The silence still hums, but it is laced now with creaks and murmurs, timber flexing under weight, rope whispering against damp wood, the low, constant rhythm of paddles dipping into brown water. The Hydaspes carries them westward, and you're aboard one of the boats, drifting beside Alexander, as the current does what war could not. It moves him. The river swells with runoff from the rains. Trees line the banks like tired sentries, their roots exposed like bones. The jungle watches them go, not with anger, but with something slower, something like pity. Alexander does not speak much these days. His gaze rests on the water ahead. His fingers brush the carved edge of the hull. He sits beneath a linen canopy, the lion's pelt folded at his side, damp and heavy as sleep. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The boats were built in haste, carved from jungle timber, bound with bronze nails, patched with leather. Some leak, others creak, but they float, most of the time. At night they camp on muddy shores. Fires sputter in the damp. Songs are sung, but quieter now, with more longing than celebration. The men whisper of cities with dry streets, of fruit that doesn't taste like sap, of wives they barely remember but still name in dreams. And you sense it too, that strange, soft grief that follows conquest, not for the fallen, but for the self left behind. You pass another closed door. One morning a boat cracks on a hidden reef. Splinters bloom across the water. A man is pulled down, his armor too heavy. Another leaps in to save him. Fails. They both vanish. Alexander orders a moment of silence, but the river doesn't stop. The silence is heavier now. Hephaestion keeps a journal in these days, small entries, scribbled in the corner of a wine-stained scroll. He no longer looks for maps, one line reads. He looks for meaning. Alexander studies the river like a language he does not yet speak. He watches how it folds around obstacles, how it carries the past downstream without resistance. He begins to understand something. Not everything must be conquered. Some things must be yielded to. You almost forget this isn't a memory. One night, a soldier asks him, "When will we return to Macedon?" Alexander looks up. "I do not know where that is anymore." The soldier laughs gently, thinking it a jest. It is not. Because for him, home is no longer a place. It is a direction, a rhythm, a memory he can no longer enter. And so, the river carries them all. West, toward deserts, toward Babylon, toward something not yet named. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. As the fireflies blink into existence over the water, Alexander leans over the edge of the boat. His reflection ripples. He does not reach for it, because he knows now, you cannot rule the river. You can only let it take you. The silence still hums, but now it carries with it the distant cry of gulls, the scent of salt and wind, and something else, something imagined. You feel it in the way the air shifts, full of outlines, of lines not yet carved, but already believed. Alexander walks the shoreline of Egypt. His boots press into pale sand, his cloak trailing just above the tide. The waves lap at his ankles, but he does not seem to notice. His mind is not here. It is a few steps ahead, or 1,000 years. You almost forget this isn't a memory. He's come from Siwa, from oracles and silence, and now he stands where the sea kisses the desert, where nothing yet lives. And yet, he sees it. A city, not in stone, not in maps, in rhythm. He lifts his spear, not for war, for design. He begins to draw. You pass another closed door. He carves a curve into the sand. A wall, then a port. He traces a market square, a temple, a library. He draws a lighthouse that does not yet exist, tall enough to speak to the stars. The men watch from a distance. Some think him mad. Others kneel and begin to trace beside him. He smiles, just faintly. "I will name it for myself," he says, "and for what I wish to leave behind. Alexandria. It begins that day, not with bricks, but with belief. You almost forget this isn't a memory." The sea wind lifts his hair. The waves wash away the edges of the lines he's drawn, but it doesn't matter. The shape has already taken root in the minds of those around him. He speaks to engineers, to priests, to scribes. He speaks of a city that holds not just power, but memory. "A place where the wisdom of all men can rest," he says, "where nothing will be forgotten. A library, a sanctuary of ink and scroll, a harbor wide enough to embrace the known world, and roads that all lead back, to here, to him." The breeze shifts. You're still there. At night, the torches dot the shoreline like fireflies caught in glass. The stars overhead match them, twin constellations, one of sky, one of earth. Hephaestion sits beside him, watching the tide rise. "You cannot be everywhere," he says. "I can leave pieces of myself behind," Alexander replies. "In names, in cities, in silence." You watch them together, two shadows wrapped in sea wind and purpose. And you wonder, what is legacy, if not a city drawn in sand that refuses to disappear? The silence still hums, but here it is muffled by wealth, heavy, warm, clinging like velvet in a sealed room. You walk beside Alexander through the palace of Susa, where the air itself smells of oil, rose, and age. The stone is cool beneath your feet, but the walls glow with light reflected off lapis and gold. Susa does not resist him. It opens. And so he enters not as conqueror, but as inheritor. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Columns rise like gilded trees. The ceilings drip with jeweled mosaics. Every surface shines, not from light, but from the weight of eyes that have admired them for centuries. You feel watched, not by people, but by legacy. This is the treasure house of Persia, the veins of empires. And Alexander now walks through it with quiet. He does not laugh. He does not cheer. He touches a golden bowl and holds it for a moment, its weight substantial but not satisfying. You pass another closed door. The courtiers bow. The scribes shuffle scrolls. Dancers rehearse movements practiced for other kings, but all fall silent when he enters, because they do not know what kind of king he is yet. And maybe, neither does he. The treasures pour from vaults, incense piled like ash, goblets carved with sun gods, thrones too heavy to lift without machines. One chamber holds 1,000 talents of silver. Another holds the armor of kings long dead. Another, perfumes so potent that breathing near them feels like drowning. He takes none for himself. He orders it catalogued, stored, measured, not because he is disinterested, because he is calculating. The silence is heavier now. At night, he sits on the roof of the palace. The gardens below sway in lamplight. A slow music plays somewhere, harps, perhaps. The notes fall like raindrops on glass. Hephaestion joins him with a decanter of wine. "Is this what you imagined?" he asks. Alexander shakes his head. "I never imagined it at all." He gazes out over the city. "It's beautiful," he says, "but it sleeps too well. You almost forget this isn't a memory, because there is rest here, but not peace." He watches his men now. Their blades dull, their bellies grow full. Their eyes wander toward courtiers, toward dancers, toward luxury, toward softness. He sees it, the beginning of erosion, not from the outside, from within. He summons them the next day. A speech, not of conquest, but of purpose. "We are not Persians," he says. "We are not slaves to silk. The world still waits." Some nod, others lower their gaze, and behind his voice, the walls still glimmer, still promise, still tempt. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. That night, he walks the halls alone. His hand brushes the marble. He does not smile. But neither does he rage. He simply walks. Because he knows the real war now lies not across rivers or deserts, but within his own shadow. And you wonder, what happens when the flame that burns brightest begins to warm instead of scorch? The silence still hums, but here it is laced with music. Not joyous, not mournful, just arranged. You stand within the palace of Susa once again, but tonight it has changed. Tonight it blooms with flowers brought from 5 kingdoms, with rugs stitched by hands that no longer fight, and with torches whose flames sway like heads bowed in reluctant assent. It is a wedding night. No, many wedding nights. 1,000 hands will hold tonight. But not all will tremble. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Alexander walks through the hall in a robe of deep violet, his hair bound with a diadem that glints like starlight. At his side walks Roxana, her veil trailing like silk smoke. Yet tonight, she is not the only bride. 91 of his generals stand in lines, each paired with a Persian noblewoman. The air carries the scent of rosewater, cinnamon, and something fainter beneath it. Resignation. You pass another closed door. The guests murmur blessings in many tongues. Persian elders nod. Macedonian veterans shift uncomfortably in embroidered tunics. The music plays on. This is not about love. It is about empire. A fusion, he calls it. A new world, stitched together not with conquest, but with marriage. Hephaestion stands apart, expression unreadable. His eyes rest on Alexander, then on Roxana, then on nothing at all. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The priests chant, the wine is poured, the veils are lifted, and the vows are spoken. So many voices sang the same words, like a chorus rehearsed too well. You watch as one man smiles faintly, another stares blankly ahead, another wipes his brow. The brides stand straight, hands folded, eyes steady. They are regal. They are dignified. They are not in love. Alexander stands before them all and declares the unity of East and West. He raises his goblet and drinks to a dream only he sees clearly. Some cheer, some drink, some weep quietly. A bell rings again, softer this time. Later that night, as the torches fade and the guests drift into the silk-swathed chambers of ceremony, Alexander walks the garden alone. The moonlight reflects off still pools, turning his steps into echoes of silver. Hephaestion finds him there, says nothing, just walks beside him. Finally, Alexander speaks. "I wanted them to belong to each other." Hephaestion replies, "They belong to you." "I didn't want that." But maybe he did. You pass another closed door. Roxana sits alone, brushing out her hair. Her eyes are distant, her posture regal. She is no stranger to roles, to silence, to rooms that ask more of her than words. She lights a small lamp and places it in the window. Just one. Its glow is steady, small, honest. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Alexander returns to his chamber late. He doesn't undress, doesn't drink. He sits by the window and watches that small flame flicker. And you wonder, what happens when 1,000 vows are spoken for a dream, but none are whispered for the heart? A candle flickers. Your breath slows. And outside, beneath a palace heavy with gold and silence, the night carries on, quietly pressing the weight of union against every stone. The silence is heavier now. It echoes through the vaulted corridors of Persepolis, through the tiled halls of Ecbatana, through the quiet chambers of Susa. It is not a silence of peace, but of recognition, of echoes, of footsteps retraced. You walk behind Alexander through the palace at dusk. The golden tiles beneath your feet hold no warmth. The air carries the faint scent of parchment, sandalwood, and something older still, dust from the thrones of kings long turned to shadow. He does not speak, but he listens. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The courtiers around him speak in polished Persian. They bow more deeply now. They wear his image on their coins and his colors in their robes. They speak of him not as conqueror, but as successor, and in time, he begins to wear their clothes. The long tunic, the royal girdle, the high, curved headdress of the Achaemenids. His Macedonian men whisper in corners. Some call it betrayal. Others call it fate. But none say it aloud when he enters the room. You pass another closed door. He walks through the hall of columns at night, the stars casting silver through the high slits in the stone. He pauses at statues of Darius, of Cyrus, of Xerxes. He does not scoff. He nods. Did they know what I now know? He murmurs. That the throne outlives the man? His own reflection shimmers in the polished obsidian of the walls, strange now, Persian in form, Macedonian in fire. Hephaestion appears in the doorway. You wear their face, he says. Alexander turns. Do I? Sometimes. I can't tell where you end and they begin. The king smiles, but faintly. You almost forget this isn't a memory. At court, he begins the ritual of proskynesis, bidding others to kneel, to touch their heads to the floor in reverence. The Persians comply. But the Greeks resist. To them, he is still mortal. To him, perhaps not. One general refuses. Alexander's face hardens. His voice, when it comes, is colder than the Zagros winds. Do not confuse where we came from with where we must go. You see it now. The lion has donned the skin of another beast, not to hide, but to absorb. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. He stands one evening at the mouth of the palace garden, the scent of lilies hanging low. A single torch burns beside him. I used to think victory meant endings, he says, but it only ever births new rooms to walk through. He walks forward. The flame leans in his direction, as if pulled, and behind him, in this garden's stillness, statues of old kings seem to turn, just slightly, watching not in judgment, but in familiarity. Because now, Alexander does not carry Persia. He wears it. And you wonder, what is the cost of becoming what you once came to destroy? The silence is heavier now. It clings to the palace walls like smoke that will not rise. It lingers in the garden where footsteps have stilled. It hums in the space between the torches, unlit, unwatched. Even the birds do not sing. The river outside moves more slowly. Time, it seems, no longer wishes to continue. You are in Ecbatana now, and Hephaestion is dying. You walk beside Alexander through long, echoing halls. His cloak trails like a shadow twice his size. His face, so often alight with purpose or fire, is unreadable now, tight, pale, silent. He does not run to the sickbed. He walks, as if to delay the inevitable with every footfall. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Hephaestion lies in the high room, beneath gauze and sunlight. His eyes are closed, and his breath rattles like a broken chime. The physicians murmur and shift. Their hands tremble beneath their cloaks. Alexander dismisses them with a whisper. The door closes. You pass another closed door. He sits at Hephaestion's side, takes his hand, burning with fever, already losing weight. For hours, he speaks no words, only watches, breathes, prays without sound. In this moment, he is not a king. He is a man, a boy who followed his friend through mountains, a conqueror who never planned for loneliness. Hephaestion opens his eyes just once more, smiles, and is gone. Ash drifts in the quiet. The palace does not know what to do with this kind of silence. When Alexander rises, the light in his eyes is altered, not dimmed, but warped, as if looking through glass that has cracked down the middle. He walks the hall like a revenant, and then grief becomes ritual. He declares Hephaestion a god, orders mourning across every province, cuts his hair, bans music, spreads black banners across the cities. A pyre is built, not a simple one, a tower of incense, cedar, ivory, and gold, 60 meters high, a monument to a single name. You almost forget this isn't a memory. When the fire is lit, it devours the sky. The scent of cinnamon and death fills every corridor. Alexander does not look away. He watches every lick of flame, every collapse of timber. He whispers to the smoke, "You were the only part of me that did not belong to history." The silence is heavier now. Days pass. He eats less, speaks less, smiles not at all. The generals fear him, not because he rages, because he doesn't. He walks the city in the black cloak of mourning. Children hide behind columns. Priests bow deeply. Servants weep without knowing why. And every night he stands at the balcony, watching the stars as if hoping one of them might fall back into his arms. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. You stand with him there now, just behind his shoulder. The air is cool, still. Beneath the stars, he is not Alexander the Great, not the godson, not the king of kings. He is only a boy who lost the one who knew his laughter. And you wonder, how can a man carry the world when the only one who helped him hold it has slipped away? The silence still hums, but here it thickens, like oil over flame. It gathers in the corners of Babylon's great halls, behind the lattice of palm shadows and polished stone. Even the air seems slower now, like each breeze must first ask permission to pass. You walk beside Alexander once more, but something is different. His steps are measured, his gaze farther away than before. He has returned to Babylon, and the city, ancient and dreaming, welcomes him not with celebration, but with anticipation, as though it knows, as though it remembers the shape of endings. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The palace gleams as it did before. The fountains still murmur. The lions still guard the gates with silent mouths and marble eyes. But Alexander is quiet. He wanders its halls like a man revisiting a childhood home, touching walls, not to conquer, but to remember. He does not speak of future battles, does not plan new cities. He watches the sky, as though he hears something in it that no one else can. You pass another closed door. One evening he raises a goblet at a banquet, not in defiance, not in glory, but in habit. The wine trembles in his hand. He drinks, and within hours he shivers. At first, no one panics. A fever, they say, from the heat, from the long march, from exhaustion. But the fever does not break. It climbs, and Alexander begins to vanish. The breeze shifts. You're still there. He lies in the great hall, surrounded by his generals. His limbs burn with invisible fire. His words slur into riddles. His gaze darts toward walls that no longer hold maps, but memories. He speaks of Hephaestion, of the ocean, of a mountain where time stops. He calls for his ring. He does not let it go. You almost forget this isn't a memory. They bring him oracles. He waves them away. They bring him water. He sips, barely. His breath is slow, then shallow, then slower still. And still, the empire waits. Outside the room, the world holds its breath. Inside, the fever dreams. He sees rivers of gold and blood, sees cities he has not built, sees himself as smoke over Alexandria, sees Hephaestion standing at the edge of light. One general dares to ask, "To whom do you leave your kingdom?" Alexander blinks, then whispers, "To the strongest." A bell rings again, softer this time. You stand in the corner of the chamber now. The torches gutter. The silence pulls its veil over the room. And still, he breathes. And still, they wait. Because no one believes that a man like this could ever stop. But the fever knows, and so does the sky. You look up, through the window behind his bed, and the stars over Babylon have never been brighter, nor more still. And you wonder, if a man touches the edge of every map, what remains when his hands fall still? The silence is heavier now. It sits in the folds of the linen sheets, in the candlelight too timid to flicker, in the bodies gathered around a bed that no longer belongs to a man, but to a moment. You're inside the royal chamber in Babylon. The scent of myrrh and sweat clings to the stone like a prayer gone unanswered. Alexander lies still, his skin damp, his pulse thin, but his presence vast. You walk around him like one moves through the ruins of a sacred place, slowly, carefully, not wanting to disturb the weight of its memory. You almost forget this isn't a memory. His generals stand like statues, arranged along the walls in silence. None meet each other's eyes. No one dares speak of succession. Not yet. They await a breath, a sign, a word. But the room offers only the shallow sound of lungs that fight to stay present. His chest rises again, and again, each breath slower, each one an empire unto itself. You pass another closed door. Beside the bed, his crown rests on a low stool, not lifted, not claimed. The gold reflects firelight but holds no warmth. He opens his eyes and sees no throne, no map, no conquest, only people. He lifts one hand, barely. Someone brings a scroll, another, ink, but he waves them away. There's nothing left to draw, he murmurs. Hephaestion's name passes his lips in a hush, then Roxana's, then his mother's, each name like a stone placed at the edge of a river. The breeze shifts. You're still there. He gestures toward the ring, the seal of command, and it is placed into his palm. He holds it for a long moment, then closes his hand, not tightly, gently, as if understanding it never truly belonged to him. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The ring falls from his fingers a moment later, without force, without drama. It simply lets go, like a leaf too tired to cling to the branch. The generals step forward, but no one moves to claim it. They all saw the breath leave him, but none yet believe he is gone. Because what do you do when the center of the world goes still? What happens when the man who never stopped moving does? The silence is heavier now. It wraps the halls of Babylon like morning silk, dark, smooth, suffocating. There is no weeping here, only restraint, a stillness that rattles deeper than grief, as if the very air fears that even one sound might awaken something it cannot contain. Alexander is dead, but no one knows what to do with that truth. Because how do you bury thunder? You walk through the palace slowly, as if moving through a dream still unfinished. The torches have been relit, but their flames seem shy, more gold than fire, more memory than heat. The mosaics on the walls no longer gleam. The floors creak in places that once hummed with purpose. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The generals gather, not in one room, in corners, in shadows, some in silence, some in whispers. Ptolemy speaks softly with Seleucus. Perdiccas walks alone. Antipater's name is spoken, but never with comfort. There is no air. There is no will. There is only a ring and ambition. You pass another closed door. Outside the palace, the streets of Babylon hold their breath. Foreign merchants pause their deals. Priests chant longer into the night. The Euphrates drifts by like a forgotten note, reflecting a sky now absent its brightest star. The lion's pelt lies folded on a marble bench. No one dares touch it. Ash drifts in the quiet. The body is placed within a golden coffin, filled with honey and oils, sealed in a casket built not from wood, but from myth itself. The bier is high, the silence beneath it, higher. But who will carry it home? No one agrees. One says Macedon, another says Egypt, another says nowhere. Let him rest where he fell. The arguments do not erupt. They simmer. The empire cracks not with war, but with hesitation. In the courtyard, Roxana sits beneath an almond tree. She is not dressed in black. She wears white. Her hands rest on her belly, where his child stirs. She says nothing, but her eyes speak the language of women who have seen empires turn to sand. You almost forget this isn't a memory. And far away, in a tent, a young soldier sharpens a blade, not for war, but for survival. Because the world left behind by Alexander is not a kingdom. It is a storm. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. No one knows where to sit. No one knows who to follow. They only know he is gone. And in the dust beneath the laurel wreath he wore, nothing grows yet, only questions. And you wonder, when the one who bore the crown becomes ash, who will dare breathe it in? The silence is heavier now. Not the silence of grief, nor reverence, nor awe. This silence walks differently. It steps without sound, sits in shadowed corners, and listens before it speaks. It coils in the edges of the palace where eyes no longer weep, but watch. Alexander is gone, and the question no one dares ask aloud now rules the empire. Who will take what he left behind? You drift through the hall of the companions. The torchlight flickers along stone walls once covered in maps, now bare. No one touches them. No one speaks of battle plans. They speak of provinces now, of titles, soldiers, supply lines, and beneath their breath, of war. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The ring lies untouched. No hand dares claim it first. Perdiccas steps into the room, calm, precise. The seal-bearer. Alexander gave him little more than proximity, but in a world where the throne is empty, nearness becomes power. Ptolemy, the lion-hearted, leans against the far column. His arms are crossed, but one hand rests near his sword. He studies Perdiccas, like a man weighing a boulder in one palm. Seleucus does not speak. Yet. But his eyes move quickly. Antipater's name floats like a ghost from the west. None bow, none kneel, but all sharpen something. You pass another closed door. In a smaller chamber, Eumenes drafts proclamations. His quill moves like a blade. His eyes flick to the door with each sound, too smart to trust the silence. One scroll bears the words, King Philip Aridaeus. Another, the child of Roxana. 2 heirs, one mad, one unborn. A kingdom divided before it even breathes. That night, in the garden, torches glow low and long. The fountain runs silent. Roxana eats alone. Her fingers rest on her belly as if guarding more than life. guarding legitimacy. A shadow steps too close to her chamber. It retreats. The silence is heavier now. The next day, horses are packed, scribes run, rumors scatter like dry leaves. Ptolemy will take the body. To Egypt, some whisper. To claim him in death, if not in life. Perdiccas objects. Arguments swell. Knives are unsheathed, but only in theory, not yet in flesh. The peace is not peace. It is pause. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the war room, once filled with grand strategies, no one speaks of Persia or India or gods. They speak of garrisons, of borders, of grain. The fire that once roared across continents now flickers between men too proud to follow and too cautious to lead. And Alexander? He is silent now. He leaves no instructions. Only echoes. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. At midnight, Perdiccas walks the empty hall, pausing before the lion's pelt folded neatly beside the sealed ring. He does not reach for it, not yet, because he knows. He who grasps too early will be blamed for what breaks. And the empire? It does not break like glass. It cracks like a glacier, slow, majestic, inevitable. The silence still hums, but now it reverberates. You hear it in the cracks along the polished floors, in the faint whisper of sandals over marble, in the deep, wide chambers that once hosted kings, now filled with men who speak louder than they listen. You are in Babylon still, but it no longer feels like his city. The hall of assembly echoes with more than footsteps. It rings with raised voices, with accusations dressed as counsel, with diplomacy clinging to the edge of threat. The empire has no head, and the body has begun to convulse. You almost forget, this isn't a memory. Ptolemy speaks first, calm but firm. The body will go west, to Siwa, to Egypt, to rest in a tomb of sunlight and stone. Perdiccas counters, not with anger, but calculation. The king must remain at the heart of the empire, he says. Babylon is the center. To move the body is to move the center. Words sharpen. Each sentence becomes a blade. Each nod, a feint. Each silence, a strategy. You pass another closed door. Outside, soldiers polish armor. Not for ceremony, for readiness. The companions no longer eat together. The pages whisper behind walls. Two camps form, though no one names them yet. East and west. Old blood and new. Inheritance and invention. In a corner of the hall, Roxana sits unseen, shrouded in veils. Her child, not yet born, already has enemies. The silence is heavier now. In the elephant stables beyond the palace, the great beasts shift uneasily. They sense it. The humans smell like fear now. Not battlefield fear, but the kind that lingers in homes, after betrayal, before violence. The mahouts feed the animals slowly. One elephant turns its head toward the city, as if hearing something only old creatures understand. Back inside, Seleucus speaks up. Without the body, the empire scatters. Another voice fires back. Without a king, the body means nothing. The words fall, heavy, like drums muffled in cloth. Eumenes steps forward at last. Then choose. But no one does. You almost forget this isn't a memory, because indecision is louder than decree. A bell rings again, softer this time. That night, Alexander's casket is guarded by 20 men, not from thieves, from each other. The torches cast long shadows that don't belong to any one figure. In the flickering light, each man sees himself as king, but only for a heartbeat. The stars over Babylon do not blink. They only watch. And in the great elephantine halls, lined with lions carved in basalt and gods chipped from forgotten dreams, the air itself waits, not for peace, not for a name, for the first cut. The silence still hums. But now it is broken by the slow rhythm of hooves over sand. Not thunder, not charge, just the tired clatter of soldiers who once stormed rivers and mountains, now crossing deserts as if sleepwalking. You are with them. The empire has not shattered, but it has drifted, like a continent cracked by silence, then tugged apart by wind. No one leads it now. They ride because they remember how, not because they know where. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The desert ahead is vast. It is not named. It stretches between provinces once held together by a single gaze. Without that gaze, it has become endless. The men speak little. Their uniforms are stained, their swords rusting at the hilt. Some carry spoils from campaigns long over. Others carry only letters, dried figs, pieces of cloth that once held scent. You pass another closed door. One cart holds scrolls Alexander left behind, unread. One holds pieces of a torn standard. The lion's head embroidered in gold is now mostly dust. An officer passes you without glance. His eyes do not see the road. They see a tent lit by a low flame in India, a spear slicing through a moonlit river, a boy on a black horse who once made every road feel like prophecy. But the boy is gone, and the roads no longer speak. The breeze shifts. You're still there. In the camp that night, fires are lit, small, reluctant. Someone plays a reed flute. The tune is broken, trailing off halfway. No one asks for more. The men sleep in bundles, their armor stacked not in rows but piles. The discipline is gone, not in rebellion, in exhaustion. They speak of going home, but no one agrees where that is. Some say Macedon, others say Egypt. Others speak of staying wherever their boots wear out. Even their gods are quiet now. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the morning, a sandstorm rises. The horizon disappears. One of the horses bolts. Another collapses. The soldiers pause, not in panic, but with the patience of those who've lost too much to fear one more loss. They wait it out. They always do. But when the storm clears, nothing feels the same. The world is wide again. Too wide. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. A captain kneels and draws a line in the sand. Here, he says softly. We stop here. No one argues. No one cheers. They simply begin unpacking the tents. And you wonder, what happens to an army with no enemy, no king, no map? Just the memory of a man who made the earth feel small? The silence is heavier now. But here, it smells of salt, of sea wind and stone warmed by sun. You walk along the northern edge of Egypt, where the Mediterranean folds into the shore like silk dragged across marble. And there she stands, Alexandria. No longer a dream in the sand, no longer a map drawn by a spear's point, but real, a city with breath, with veins of marble and limestone, with docks that stretch into morning, and markets that hum with foreign tongues. Alexander is gone, but his city waits. You almost forget this isn't a memory. You pass between pylons carved in old scripts. Greek here, Egyptian there. They do not argue. They stand side by side, like two arms of a wider embrace. The streets are filled with students, merchants, sailors. The air tastes like ink and brine. And always, whispers. Whispers of the one who named the city but never ruled it, who laid its line in the sand but never walked its full length. You pass another closed door. The lighthouse at Pharos is rising, stone by stone. It will be taller than any temple. Its fire will shine across the dark waters, not to warn of danger, but to remind the world he was here. And beneath it, in the city's heart, scrolls begin to multiply. A library, a living memory, not of war, but of words, not of conquest, but of knowledge. Inside, a scholar whispers to a scribe, "Write his name at the top of every scroll." The scribe pauses. Which name? The one that still burns, the scholar says. The one even silence remembers. The breeze shifts. You're still there. At the harbor, a boy skips stones. One lands far, sending ripples across the water. He laughs, not knowing whose statue stands nearby, not knowing his shadow touches the same shore. An old sailor tells him a story of a king who came from the north, who named a city and vanished like lightning. The boy asks, "Where did he go?" The sailor shrugs. He went everywhere. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In a garden shaded by fig trees, Roxana walks with slow steps. Her son follows behind, curious, quiet, not yet knowing what world he will inherit. She kneels to fix his sandal, whispers something in his ear. It is not a prophecy. It is a mother's reminder. You are not your father, but you are made of him. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. At sunset, the wind carries the call of gulls across the marble tiles. The city glows, not from fire, but from hope. It is not his sword that built this. It is his absence. And you wonder, what lives longer, his empire or the name carved in every harbor's breath? The silence still hums, but now it hums through markets, through fingers that exchange silver beneath desert suns and marble colonnades, through dusty purses in Thebes, in Tyre, in Bactria, and through the whispers of merchants who never saw him but carry his face in their palms. You walk through the agora of a foreign city. It doesn't matter which. It is one of many, everywhere. The stalls bustle with figs, scrolls, goatskins, jars of myrrh. Voices rise and fall in languages that would have pleased him: Persian, Greek, Aramaic, the tongues of men he once brought together by blade and by vision. And amid all of it, coin, round, cold, eternal. You almost forget this isn't a memory. You step beside a vendor selling small statues. In a wooden tray, there lies a handful of silver drachmas. On each one, the face glows. Sharp jaw, parted lips, eyes like carved flame. Alexander. But not quite. This version of him is smooth, perfected, idealized. A curl here, a god's wreath there. Some show ram's horns, whispering of Ammon. Others show the lion's pelt, Heracles reimagined. None show the scar on his thigh. None show the fever in Babylon. None show the boy beneath the lion skin. You pass another closed door. In a tavern near the harbor, a drunk soldier tosses a coin and catches it. He still pays for everything, he says, laughing. Even now. In a temple, a priest lays a coin on an altar, not to the old gods, but to the one who once walked among them. To the one who stood taller, he whispers. In a back alley, a thief kisses a stolen tetradrachm and slips it into his sandal. May your luck follow my feet, he mutters. The silence is heavier now. And in a house of scholars, one man unwraps a clay tablet from Persia. It mentions the king who crossed the world like fire. He sets the tablet beside a coin. He stares at both and wonders which one will outlast the other. You almost forget this isn't a memory, because this is what remains. Not the phalanx, not the cavalry, not the cities, but the face, staring up from silver, unblinking, unaging. You pass another closed door, and inside that door, a child is born. A boy who will grow up never knowing the man. But he will know the coin. He will know the name. He will carry it in his purse, in his mouth, in his spine. He will be told, this is the greatest who ever lived, and he will believe it, even if he never asks why. A bell rings again, softer this time. And you wonder, if the image outlives the man, does the truth matter, or only the weight of the myth? The silence still hums, but here it crackles, low, reluctant, like a whisper turning to flame. You are back in Alexandria. but not the city of gardens and scrolls you once walked beside him. No, this Alexandria is trembling. Smoke coils from the windows of the great library. It slips through lattice screens, through the marble colonnades. It does not scream, it sighs. You step into the hallway and feel the heat on your face. Not searing, not wild, but steady, deliberate, like memory deciding it's tired. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Scrolls lie scattered across the floor, bundles of papyrus, crinkled and soft. The ink still legible, names of stars, equations for eclipses, poems copied from Ionian cliffs. They do not resist the fire. They yield. Inside, men scramble with buckets, shawls, robes. One librarian wraps his arms around a bundle of Aristotle's writings and tries to carry them toward the courtyard. But the smoke is faster than his legs. A torch drops in another chamber. Whether by accident or design, no one knows. But now a second room flares, and with it 1,000 thoughts catch fire. You pass another closed door, and behind it, books, thousands more. Quiet, sleeping, not yet touched. But soon, they will be gone before anyone knows what they were. A girl stands in the center of the second room, clutching a scroll. The edges glow. She doesn't cry. She just holds it tighter. You catch a glimpse of its title before the flames kiss her hands. On the Soul. Ash drifts in the quiet. Outside, the lighthouse still stands. It does not flicker. The port remains open. The city breathes. But inside these walls, the mind of the world forgets its name. And in that forgetting, something breaks. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In a shadowed cloister, a statue of Alexander overlooks the courtyard. His face, idealized. His hands open. His eyes turned east. He built this place for permanence. But even fire loves what was meant to last. A monk tries to copy a scroll from memory, hand trembling, ash on his fingers. He doesn't finish the sentence. And somewhere, in some other time, someone will ask, what did they know? And no one will be able to answer. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. You watch as the final scroll curls in on itself, like a dying moth, wings turned to smoke. It said something about stars, or grief, or the names of winds that once blew across the Hindu Kush. You don't remember. No one will. And you wonder, if even knowledge burns, what truly remains? The silence is heavier now. It hangs in the storeroom air like dust that never settles. You are far from the battlefield now, far from Babylon, far from the desert winds and shouting legions. This room is quiet, low-ceilinged, still. Here, no swords are drawn, no banners fly. Here, only cloth remembers. You step inside, and there, folded in a cedar chest, is the lion's pelt. His lion's pelt, the one that once trailed across marble in Macedon, that shimmered on his shoulders beside Bucephalus, that watched as empires opened like scrolls beneath his boots. It is no longer worn. It has not been worn in years. You almost forget this isn't a memory. A servant kneels beside the chest, brushing dust from the folds. He pauses when he sees you, not with fear, but with recognition. Not of who you are, but what you are part of. You've come for it, he says softly. He doesn't ask who sent you. He doesn't need to. You kneel, reach in, and lift it. It is lighter than you expected. Lighter than it was when it carried thunder in its hem. You pass another closed door. In the corridor beyond, 2 children play with carved figurines. One pretends to be a king, the other, a horse. Their laughter echoes through the sandstone walls, washing gently over the silence of the storeroom. They do not know the name Alexander, but the game knows it for them. In the garden, a fig tree drops one fruit, soft, ripe, forgotten. The silence still hums. Roxana's old maid walks through the courtyard, her back bent with years. She stops before the statue of Alexander, weathered, cracked, green with moss. She offers no prayer. She simply rests one hand against his foot. She exhales. "He used to wear the sky like a coat," she whispers. You almost forget this isn't a memory. That night, the lion's pelt is moved once more, not to be worn, not to be burned, but to be preserved. A relic, a symbol, a question folded into fur. It is placed in a sealed crate, labeled only in ink. Basileus. It will be moved by mule, by boat, by accident. Lost, perhaps. Found again. Or never. It doesn't matter, because what it meant already lives elsewhere. You pass another closed door. In a house by the sea, an old man tells a child a story of a boy who tamed a wild horse. He wraps the tale in wonder, not fact. The boy asks, "Was he real?" The old man smiles. He was more than that. The pelt rests in the dark. And you wonder, if the garment outlives the man, was the lion ever the one wearing it? The silence still hums, but now it breathes differently, not in libraries or battlefields, not in cities or tombs. It lives inside sleep, inside the minds of those who have heard his name whispered through columns, carved into coin, floating in firelight. Alexander is dead, and yet he dreams on. You drift through the bedchambers of kings and generals, priests and poets, all across the centuries. Some sleep soundly, others twist beneath heavy furs, but all have seen him, somewhere behind their eyes. You almost forget this isn't a memory. A king in Parthia wakes at dawn, gasping. He says he saw a figure bathed in lion skin and thunder, standing atop a burning library, pointing east. No one in the court questions him. They only nod. Everyone dreams of Alexander now and then. In a cloistered room of Byzantium, a monk weeps. He dreamt of a horse galloping through the sky, dragging the stars behind it like embers. The rider never turned, but the monk swears it was him. And in Rome, a young general wakes with his hand curled into a fist. "I saw him," he says. "He laughed at me." You pass another closed door. Inside, an emperor leans over his bed, sketching by candlelight. Not maps, not battle lines, just a face. A face he's seen since he was a boy, always just before waking, always half in shadow. He does not know it fully, but he knows the feeling. Awe, unease, desire. He hides the sketch in a drawer, but the dreams return. They always do. The silence is heavier now. You walk among them, these dreamers. Some wear crowns, some wear shackles, some wake with resolve, others with dread. A scribe once wrote, "No man is born who does not fear the shadow of greater men." Alexander is that shadow. Even now, centuries later, children are named for him. Horses, cities, storms. A man lights a candle before going to bed. He is not a king, just a scholar. He murmurs, "Don't come tonight. Let me rest." But still, in the early dark, he sees a mountain trail, a sword gleaming at dusk, a pair of eyes that once saw the edge of the world and called it home. You almost forget this isn't a memory, because the dreams do not lie. They do not speak of dates or borders. They carry only the weight of presence. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. And you wonder, if a man enters so many dreams, does he ever really die? The silence still hums. But here, it is not silence of absence. It is the silence of questioning, of too many voices layered across too many years. You're no longer in Babylon or Egypt or the halls of marble memory. You are somewhere deeper, inside the minds of those who write the past. And what they see is no longer certain. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Scrolls unravel in a monk's chamber. He reads by lamplight, translating a Greek passage into Latin. The ink is faded, the script smudged. The name Alexander appears again and again, but beside it, contradictions. He was short. He was tall. He wept for worlds. He built them. He died in Babylon. He vanished on a mountain. He ascended. The monk frowns. He does not know which story is true, so he writes them all. You pass another closed door. Beyond it, a council of scholars debates. Some say he was divine, others merely brilliant. One claims he never existed at all, a symbol stitched together from broken myths and borrowed gods. None agree. But none dare erase him. In a library high above the Bosphorus, a woman catalogues manuscripts. She lingers on one, soft vellum, edge scorched. It tells of a river that turned to wine when Alexander crossed it, of birds that followed his voice, of trees that bowed to him. She sets the scroll aside. Poetry, she whispers, but her hands tremble. Nothing moves, not even you, but the story continues. You wander deeper, through dusty chambers where scribes argue with ghosts. In every corner, his name flickers. In stone, in ink, in song, but never the same twice. You almost forget this isn't a memory. A historian in a far-off land draws a line on a parchment map. He came this way, he declares. But no ruins are found there, only wind. Another swears by the stars that Alexander saw India. Another says he never left Greece. Some say he loved a man, others a goddess. Some say he sought immortality, others say he found it. You wonder if even he would recognize himself in these pages now. If he were to return, would he bow to his own myth or burn it? A bell rings again, softer this time. And you wonder, when the story is retold 1,000 times and the truth is no longer needed, who does a man become? Welcome to Nocturne Historia. The candle is low now. The parchment curls at the edges, the ink softening to shadow. You sit once more in the quiet space where his story began, not at the throne, not in the saddle, not with a sword in hand, but with a map, laid open beneath a restless sky. And now, at last, it folds. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The great parchment that once stretched across the table of his war tent now rests in the archive of an empty palace. Its corners are frayed. Ink stains bloom like dusk shadows across regions once soaked in blood and glory. You trace the path again, Pella to Thebes, Issus, Tyre, Gaugamela, Persepolis, Susa, India, Babylon. Every line is quiet now, no arrows drawn, no stars marked, just the stillness of land no longer called. You pass another closed door. Behind it, a chamber where the lion's pelt lies folded. One last time, untouched. Its gold faded, but intact. It no longer roars. It no longer carries storms. It is soft, and still, and waiting. A boy finds it decades later. He touches it gently, as if it might speak. He doesn't know who wore it, only that it mattered. The silence is heavier now. The bell that once rang in a temple to honor the king tolls again, once, faintly, then no more. Dust gathers at its base. Ivy climbs its post. In a forgotten harbor, a coin sinks into the sea. Alexander's face blinks upward through water. It catches the light one final time, then vanishes. In the sands outside Babylon, the stone marker bearing his name lies half buried. Wind traces its edge. The script is almost gone. And in dreams, he walks slower now. Fewer call his name, but some still do. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. You close the map. The lines are all inside you now. Every journey, every storm, every wound. You carry it not in your hands, but in your breath, in your sleep, in the space between wonder and grief. The story ends, but the echo stays. The silence is heavier now, but it is no longer empty. It is thick with intent, pulsing just beneath the surface of marble courtyards and silk banners. The man is gone, his breath spent, his story folding. But those who remain, those who circled him like moons, have not disappeared. They were not his sons, not by blood, but by ambition, by obsession, and they are ready to inherit. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Perdiccas tightens his cloak as he steps into the light. He does not reach for the throne. No one does. But he speaks as if it already listens. The empire must remain whole, he says, as he intended. But others hear, as I intend. You pass another closed door. In Macedon, Antipater watches from afar. His letters arrive late, but sharp. No child rules here, he writes, and no foreign queen commands our blood. Cassander reads his father's words and grows colder. In the east, Seleucus gathers maps. In the south, Ptolemy watches the Nile with a gaze that sees temples, pyramids, and crowns long buried. His mind does not rush. He knows. The dead command only until the living disagree. In the dark, Roxana holds her son tighter. The breeze shifts. You're still there. The council breaks, not with argument, but with absence. Men leave. Some return. Some do not. Each carries a piece of the empire in their fist. In a corridor no longer guarded, the shield of Alexander hangs askew. No one bothers to fix it. The marble has begun to chip beneath it, as if the wall itself is tiring of the weight. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In a dream, a soldier sees the great king standing in a storm. He calls out, "What should we do?" But the figure says nothing, only turns away, and walks into wind. And so the sons who were not sons begin to write new maps, not with compasses, but with spears. You pass another closed door, and behind it, a chamber of bronze where the royal ring is sealed in wax. No one wears it, no one dares, but all of them want it, even if they pretend not to. And you wonder, when no one is chosen, does the world choose chaos? The silence still hums, but now it hums like a blade unsheathed too slowly, not yet swung, not yet blooded, just exposed, waiting. You are standing at the edge of an empire not yet shattered, but already claiming new names for old wounds. This is not the story of one fall, but of many, of borders redrawn by men who once shared fire, now building kingdoms from cinders. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Perdiccas moves first. With the royal army at his back, he declares guardianship over the boy, Alexander's son, unborn, but already the weight of 1,000 ambitions. Beside him, Roxana does not speak, but her presence is message enough. In Egypt, Ptolemy laughs. "Let them keep the crown," he says. "I'll keep the body." And he does. He intercepts the funeral procession meant for Macedon, claiming the casket for Alexandria, for glory, for legitimacy, for power. You pass another closed door. In the east, Seleucus rallies what he can. Coins, soldiers, grain. Not much yet, but enough to hold a river. He waits. He listens. But in Macedon, Cassander sharpens his teeth. He has no child to protect, no throne to claim, only a name to avenge. The silence is heavier now. The first blood is drawn in the hills of Cappadocia. A skirmish, then a siege, then a march. Old generals look one another in the eye across battlefields once walked together as brothers. Now they write letters with poisoned ink, and on every front the cry is the same: we fight for Alexander's will. But none have seen it, because it was never written, only whispered. only hoped. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In Babylon, the great palace empties. Statues covered in cloth, maps left to curl. Even the torches burn lower, as if the halls themselves understand that their master is never coming home. You pass another closed door, and behind it, a small figure crouches. A scribe, once proud to record edicts, now hiding his scrolls. He no longer writes history. He writes survival. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. The empires of Alexander will not be buried in one tomb. They will be scattered, in coins, in blood, in children, in flames. And you wonder, when the swords speak louder than the crown, who rules the silence? The silence is heavier now, not the silence of mourning, not even of hesitation. This silence is the breath before a declaration, when men forget what they once followed and remember only what they can claim. You are no longer in an empire. You are in the reflection of one. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Ptolemy sits on a throne carved not in Babylon, but in Memphis. His guards wear Egyptian linen, but speak Macedonian. He builds temples, opens tombs, calls himself Soter, Savior. The people bow, the priests nod, the Nile flows as it always has. But the lion's pelt never touched this land. You pass another closed door. In the east, Seleucus names cities after his father, his son, his dreams. He does not look west anymore. His eyes are fixed on the Tigris, on Persia, on the edge of something older than conquest. His men call him king, not with fear, but with necessity. In Macedon, Cassander tightens his grip. He does not speak of Alexander. He buries statues. He tears down the boy's name from public squares. Enough ghosts, he says. Let the living rule. In the dark, Roxana and her son are moved again, then gone. Ash drifts in the quiet. Each general builds his court, his myth, his coin, his god. They write laws in Greek, but rule in fear. Some erect marble columns in Alexander's honor. Others paint over his face. But all of them, every one, claims to defend his legacy, even as they rewrite it. You almost forget this isn't a memory. The map on the wall of a school in Syria no longer shows one name. It shows many. Egypt, Macedon, Syria, Thrace, Bactria. The teacher says, "Once these were one." The children blink. One raises a hand. How? The teacher shrugs. A man tried. And that is all. You pass another closed door. Inside, an artist sketches a coin, not for currency, but for memory. He places a lion on one side, a face on the other. But he does not sign it, because who could claim authorship of a dream passed from blade to border to bone? A bell rings again, softer this time. And you wonder, if an empire shatters into men who call themselves kings, was it ever whole? The silence is heavier now. It lies across the earth like a veil, not mourning, not defeat, something else, something slower. The kind of quiet that settles over stones worn by centuries, over names nearly forgotten, over maps no longer read, but felt. You are at the edge now, not of the world, of the dream. You almost forget this isn't a memory. A torch burns low in a hall no longer entered. Its flame dances without witness, casting flickers on the worn fabric of a folded standard, its edges moth-eaten, its gold dulled. The lion's pelt rests atop it, not draped, not displayed, simply there. Someone placed it there, long ago. No one knows who. You pass another closed door. Behind it, a room of maps, drawn by many hands, colored by many desires. One is old, brittle, nearly torn down its spine. But still, faintly, it reads, Alexandros, not in the center, not at the edge, but written diagonally, across a sea, a mountain, a river, as if even then no one knew where he truly belonged. A candle flickers, your breath slows. Roxana's grave has no name, only a flower grows there. Each year one petal blooms red. The boy she bore grew only to be remembered as lost potential. He never held a sword, never wore a crown. But in one village, a story remains, of a child with storm in his eyes. In a temple, a priest rings a bell. Once. Then silence. The same bell that rang at Alexander's birth. The same that echoed when he fell. Now, softer, almost shy. The silence is heavier now. You drift outside, where the stars have shifted. Constellations once drawn for war now glide peacefully above empty lands. The torch gutters out at last. Smoke rises. The lion sleeps. The map closes. And you wonder, if no one remembers his footsteps, but all still feel the tremor. Did he ever leave? The silence is heavier now. It has outlived the empire, outlived the men who claimed it, outlived the temples, the scrolls, the coins. It is not a hush. It is a presence. A space where memory once burned and now cools to ash. You are standing in a place unnamed, a high plateau, no stones, no markers, just wind. But you feel him here. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Far below, a river curls like a thought abandoned mid-sentence. The earth is brown and wide, not conquered, not claimed, just breathing. A traveler kneels near the cliff. He holds no torch, no book, only a question. Did he come this far? He whispers. There is no answer, but the wind shifts, gently, as if uncertain. You pass another closed door. In a town far away, a child is born. The midwife names him Alexander, not for greatness, just for rhythm. The mother shrugs. I liked the sound. She does not know the name will one day bloom on coins, then fade from stone, then return in song. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In the library of an old fortress, a historian writes the final line of a volume on the successor wars. He hesitates, then adds a final note, and still, none of them became him. He closes the book and sighs, not with reverence, with fatigue. The myth has grown too heavy. You walk beside a road once trodden by elephants. There is no marker now, no footprints. But a shepherd leading sheep pauses mid-step and says, "This land remembers something." He cannot say what, but you understand. The silence still hums, because silence now is all that is left of motion, and motion was always his language. You pass another closed door, and behind it, a statue, unfinished, just the curve of a shoulder, the hint of a jawline. The sculptor died before completing it. No one resumed the work. Some things are not meant to be captured. A candle flickers, your breath slows, and you wonder, if the world no longer says his name aloud, but dreams still tremble when thunder rolls, is he truly gone? The silence is heavier now, but it wears different clothes. It walks in sandals down narrow alleys, wears scholars' robes or cloaks of wanderers. It no longer bears the scent of war. Now it smells of ink, of parchment, of cedar chests closed long ago. You are in a monastery perched above the sea. No name etched on its gate, no empire nearby. Yet inside, a scroll is unrolled, and across it, faintly, stubbornly, the words appear: Son of Philip, Tamer of the East. But the scribe reading them doesn't pause, doesn't react. The name doesn't catch. He copies it as he would any other, mechanical, detached. To him, It's just a story. You almost forget this isn't a memory. Outside, the wind beats softly against the stone. Seagulls circle above the rocks. Below, a trader guides his mule along a coastal path. In his bag is a small silver coin, faded, uneven. The face has worn away, but still, the weight remains. You pass another closed door. Inside, a young girl practices archery with her grandfather. He corrects her stance. "Wider feet," he says, "like the king who once rode across the world." She laughs. "What king?" He doesn't answer right away, then shrugs. "Just a name I remember." She looses the arrow. It hits the post, not the mark. Still, she smiles. The silence is heavier now. In a classroom beneath vines, a teacher recites a list of rulers. Xerxes, Caesar, Charlemagne. One boy raises his hand. "You forgot one." The teacher pauses, then nods. "Ah, yes, that one." She doesn't add the name. She simply lets the silence hold it. Because some names no longer need to be spoken. They are felt, like thunder with no storm, like shadows that stretch across centuries. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In a museum behind glass, a cracked bronze medallion lies unmarked. Tourists walk past. One child stops, taps the glass. "Who's this?" The father squints. "No idea. Looks like someone important." Then they move on. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. And you wonder, if his name fades, but his shape remains in how we speak, how we rule, how we dream. Is that not the deepest legacy of all? The silence is heavier now, but in this silence, there is wonder, not grief, not memory. Something else, softer. A curiosity that slips through generations like a secret told beside the fire. You are walking beside a shoreline in a distant land. The waves hush softly against the stone. Children play near tide pools, and an old woman tells them a story. Of a man, of a horse with eyes like dusk, of a journey across the entire sky. She does not use his name. She does not need to. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In a valley deep in the Caucasus, villagers believe he sleeps beneath their mountain. They leave olives and honey at a cave's mouth, just in case he wakes. In a desert caravan, a merchant swears he once met a soldier whose great-great-grandfather carried a sword from the edge of the earth, given by a king with a lion's cloak. In the highlands of Kashmir, a whisper passes from mother to child. The one who turned rivers backward. No name, just awe. You pass another closed door. In a monastery tower, a monk translates an Arabic manuscript. It speaks of Dul Qarnayn, the two-horned one, who built a wall to hold back the dark tribes beyond the world. The monk pauses. He has read this tale before, in a different tongue, under a different name. The breeze shifts. You're still there. In a city of towers and copper domes, a poet pens verses of a man who kissed the horizon. Not a conqueror, a seeker. The crowd gathers not to debate history, but to feel it. A child recites the poem by heart. He has never heard of Macedon, but he knows the rhythm of the tale. You almost forget this isn't a memory. In Rome, he became model. In Persia, villain. In Egypt, divine. Across centuries, his name was bent, reshaped, sung, sometimes feared, sometimes worshipped, sometimes doubted, but never erased. A bell rings again, softer this time, and you wonder, if a man is carried in myth long after truth is lost, does he live in fiction, or is fiction where we keep what we cannot bear to forget? The silence is heavier now, but it no longer presses. It floats, like dust in golden morning, like the last warmth from a candle just extinguished. You are not walking anymore. You are drifting. Through the spaces between names, between pages, between stars. And yet, he is still here. You almost forget this isn't a memory. A torch burns in a dream you cannot place. Not Macedon, not Egypt, just a room without doors. On the wall, the shadow of a lion's pelt. On the table, a folded map. Beneath it all, his footsteps, faint and unnumbered. Someone once told his story, then told it again and again, until it was no longer his, until it became yours. You pass another closed door. Behind it, a sea, silent, endless. A ship drifts across it without captain or crew. Its sail is torn, but it does not sink. A single golden helm lies on its deck, untouched by time, its metal dull, but enduring. The wind knows the name it once followed, but does not speak it. The silence still hums. In a village garden, an old man plants fig trees. His grandson helps, asking questions. What did he look like? Did he win every battle? Did he come back? The old man smiles. He rode east and never stopped. But why? The boy asks. To see if the sun had an end. You almost forget this isn't a memory, because it never was. It was always a dream carried forward, a question wrapped in armor, a thunder that kept moving, until we had to imagine where it finally rested. And now, it rests here, in you. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. You sit beside the map once more. It is blank now. Or perhaps it always was. The lion's pelt is folded beneath your head. The bell has rung. The torch has dimmed. And in the space between your inhale and exhale, he is not a king, not a god, not a myth, but a breath. And you wonder, if you dream of him now, does that mean the story has truly ended? Or begun again? The story is over now. The torches have dimmed. The banners have fallen. The winds that once carried armies now kiss sleeping fields. You are not walking anymore. You are resting, beneath the memory of footsteps that no longer echo. You do not need to remember his name. It lingers in the spaces between stars, in the hush between pages turned long ago. The lion sleeps. The map is folded. The sea is calm. There is nothing left to conquer, nothing left to prove. Only breath, only stillness. Let your thoughts drift, like coins in slow water. Let the images fade, not because they are lost, but because they are safe now, tucked into story. The horse is grazing in a quiet field. The sword is sheathed forever. The child in you, who once longed to ride into the horizon, can now lie still. You are not alone. You never were. You carry not his crown, but his courage, not his empire, but his echo. And even that is enough. Let the silence cradle you now. Let the bell ring no more. Let the dream be yours, entirely. You are safe. You are home. You are whole. The stars remain, but you may close your eyes. The journey is done. The torch has gone out. Sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.